The maid enters her mistress's room and says she has brought dinner. The girl thanks the nanny. The little mistress looked at the food and then asked the maid to open her mouth, as she wanted to feed her a bun. The surprised nanny says with delight that her princess is simply adorable, and then offers to eat herself because she understands that there is very little for two. However, the girl objects and explains that any food tastes better if you share it with someone, and of course, she would like them to eat together. The nanny tells the girl she'll be back soon, as she only has to clear the dishes. The little girl encourages her to come back quickly. The main character looked in the mirror and thought that she had a dress that was not suitable for a princess and that she was already 6 years old. But because of her height, she looked 5 at most. The girl believes she will have another miserable life because she was reincarnated and found herself in a fantasy novel she read in a past life. Duke Carden fell Bardion, who was taught loyalty to the home but was not shown love. Great Saint Rena, a commoner with great magical power and a kind heart. Fate itself brought them together. Together, they overcame all difficulties and, at the end of the book, got married. After all, they thought they would have a long and happy life. Everyone hopes for a happy ending. But unfortunately, reality is different. After giving birth, Rena struggled to recover for a long time and ultimately died. Duke Carden was beside himself with grief. Unable to cope with the loss, he chose to forget his little daughter's existence. While walking through the garden, the main character thought that this was cruel treatment of children. Suddenly, the little girl saw the maids and decided that it would be better not to be seen by them, and then decided to hide. The maids discussed their little mistress's nameless princess. The dark-haired maid smiled and said she couldn't imagine how this little one could be a princess. The woman doesn't understand whether anyone really treats her accordingly, because they think she'll just amaze them and be a waste of food. The maid says she understands why the nanny fusses over her so much. She also says she's beautiful and protects her. The maid insisted that no one needed this little girl except the nanny. And when the girl heard this, she quickly ran away, because she couldn't bear to hear it anymore. In the evening, lying in bed, Nanny reads the girl a book about how her wish came true. And since then, she has always been happy. The maid wished her mistress good night, and the girl asks the moon if her wish can come true. The nanny assured that, of course, it would come true, and then she became interested in what the little lady wanted and asked about it. The main character confidently says that she doesn't want anything, and then simply tells the nanny to hug her. The baby believes that her wish will never come true because she wanted her mother to be next to her. The girl remembered an incident from her past life about her mother leaving and asking her not to leave her in an orphanage. The princess still hoped that the moon would return her mother to her, because she would be a good girl who only wanted a real family. The next day, when the girl opened the door to the corridor, she heard shouts that everything should sparkle and the maids should be more careful so as not to break anything. The little girl wondered what was going on. The head maid asked if the maids could work any faster, as the Duke would be arriving any minute. Hearing this, the main character thought that her father had decided to return to the mansion and did not understand why the maid was staring at her like that. The woman turns to the little girl and asks her to listen to her, then insists that she's not a princess. Therefore, she should go to her room immediately since they're busy after all. The little girl agreed and thought that this aunt was very disgusting, because she was a princess after all, and did not understand how she dared to treat her like that. The main character is very offended and believes that they can think whatever they want, but it's her life. Within a few minutes, the girl decided to go into the garden and then hid in the bushes. She thought that the maids thought she was just obeying them, but she was already 6 years old and had never seen her father. The young lady is sure that she must see her father no matter what the cost. A few minutes later, a very handsome young gentleman appeared. The servants greeted him. The little girl realized it was him and thought she should get closer, then ran out without thinking. The girl turns to her dad and greets him too. And at the same time, she bowed her head and blushed. The Duke asks where the maids are and why she dares to talk to him. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes that no one needs her in this life. The girl became very angry, then took off her shoe and threw it in her father's face. She asked if he was a fool. The little girl runs away, screaming, saying that Carden is a fool. And for a while, she doesn't understand what she's done, because she thinks she'll be punished now. The main character was thinking that the maids would get in trouble too, and when she looked back, she saw her father running after her, and she thought that now he himself had decided to punish her. The princess screams, saying that he is evil, and suggests that he not approach her, because she has another shoe. The Duke asks her to look at her foot. She sees that she's hurt it, then sits down and says it hurts. The man throws the shoe near the girl, and then leaves without saying anything. The little girl doesn't understand what this means, and at that moment, she realizes that this is her chance. After all, she believes that she shouldn't give up. The main character understands that she has been preparing for this day for a long time, and even the Duke will not be able to resist her sweetness. The next morning, when the little girl woke up, she realized she had a lot of work ahead of her. After all, she had been thinking all night about what to do. The main character thinks Carden is very mean. After all, this is the first time he's come to visit his daughter in 6 years. And the girl assumes that he certainly had a reason for coming to this palace. She thought that she should just forget about what happened yesterday. After all, today was a very ordinary morning. The little girl remembered that the nanny said she would be back for dinner, and therefore assumes that this is her chance. And lately I thought that I should leave her a note so that this kind aunt wouldn't worry. The little princess ran out into the corridor where the maids were working and thought that the nanny would guess from the drawing where she had gone. Suddenly, the girl saw that there were so many flowers in the garden. She realized that with such short legs, she couldn't run fast. Eldor's garden is full of beautiful, delicate lilac flowers, and it was there that Carden proposed to Reina. The main character thought she couldn't believe she was actually here. It was even more beautiful than she'd imagined when she read the book. The little girl remembered that now was not the time to admire. She needed to run and collect the bouquet as quickly as possible. The girl realizes that picking flowers is more difficult than it seems because she has small hands. Suddenly, the maids approached the little girl and asked her what she was doing there. But the little girl didn't even know what to tell them. The maid thinks that she should probably take better care of the garden, otherwise the flowers will be stolen. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was actually a princess and did not understand how they dared to look down on her. But suddenly, the maid tossed a bucket of water, dousing the girl. She then apologized, explaining that she was being clumsy. The maid, smiling, says their princess is just like Chris when she's wet, calling her poor thing. At this point, the little girl thinks this is too much, then grabs her by the hair and tugs. The maid screams and tells her to let her go, then says she asked for it. But suddenly the gentleman appears and asks the ladies what's going on. The maids greeted the Duke, and the little girl wondered whether it was necessary for him to come when she was in such a state. Carden asks how dare they and offers to explain themselves. However, the maids only remained silent in response, and he says that if they have nothing to say, then they should prepare to die. The little girl realized that it seemed like her father was very angry because she had ruined the garden, which was full of memories of Rhine. Suddenly, the maid screams and explains that the princess grabbed her by the hair. She simply lunged at her and grabbed her hair. The maid explains that they just wanted to check the garden. At that moment, the protagonist realizes she needs to say something to protect herself. The girl, screaming, insists that these women are lying. After all, she wasn't the one who started it. The young gentleman turns to the little girl and asks her to explain what she was doing there. The girl explains that she wanted to pick a bouquet, but the maid doused her with water. Hearing this, the maid suggests the princess simply tell the truth. The girl insists she started it and calls her a liar. The maid grabbed the little girl by the hand. And at that moment, the main character saw the very same force of the Duke that had knocked down the maids. The book said that only one person, Carden, was fluent in Aurora, and that neither magic nor a sword could compare to her. Therefore, only he, a skilled swordsman and mage, is capable of using it. The princess believes that she has finally seen the Duke in action. Carden orders that these maids be removed and charged with insulting a member of the noble family. The little girl looked at the garden and thought that it was full of memories of the Rhine, and now it was in this state. The princess asks if she will be taken away too. And at that moment, she thought that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. The gentleman assures that this filth has no place here. Little one thought that he should watch his language. The little girl realizes that if she thinks about it, Carden was exactly the same in the book. The Duke asks her what she's doing there. Meanwhile, she's thinking about how the maids destroyed his garden, and how she did the same to his beloved Reina. The girl assures him it's a secret. And then he leaves, and she thinks he didn't even ask if she was mistaken. But suddenly, the man takes the flower and gives it to the girl. She asks in surprise if this beauty is for her. The Duke insists that she came here for flowers and asks if that's true. Then he suggests she go and have a good wash. The princess wondered what it meant that he was worried after all. And then she asked him if he liked the flower. Carden says that of course she likes it, and then tells her again to go wash up already. Sitting in her room, the main character thought that he wasn't what she'd imagined. After all, she'd thought he simply hated her, which was why he'd left her. But it seems this father went off to war, and she really doesn't remember much. The girl believes that memories of her past life must have returned just after he left, and so she suggests that maybe he doesn't hate her at all. The nurse tells Milady that the Duke has given her the medicine. Hearing this, she thinks they can now be closer, and then tells the nurse that she is very happy and wants to be held. When the princess changed her clothes, she walked down the corridor and said that life is beautiful, and at that time, she thought that she would immediately begin her plan. The girl picked some flowers and thought about how there was no trace of yesterday's mess. Walking down the hallway, the main character wonders where her father's room is. She has to find him. The princess saw a maid walking down the hallway and decided to follow her. Suddenly, she realized her legs were tired. She decided to rest. The Duke looked at Milady in surprise and asked how she ended up here. The princess held out a flower and said it was for his daddy. The gentleman took the flower and then said it was all crushed. The girl asked him to be her friend. Hearing this, the man asks in surprise what it means. She explains that she will bring him flowers every day. The main character said goodbye to the gentleman. She thought maybe she had acted too hastily, and then she protested, believing that nothing would work without persistence. The princess says she's sure Dad will like it. Meanwhile, she reflects on how Carden is her friend, and that's a success. While sitting at breakfast, the main character turns to the nanny and says that she will be back soon. The woman asks in surprise if she's going to see the Duke. The girl says yes, and the nanny offers to accompany her. The maid tells the princess that the master is probably on the parade ground. The girl agrees and suggests they go together. Every day for a week, the main character comes to him and brings him a flower. One day, the gentleman said she didn't bring them anymore. The little girl, surprised, asks if he doesn't like the flowers. The man explains that it's pointless, and the girl hasn't visited him since. The nanny told her that the Duke was currently training with the knights on the parade ground, and the girl was certain that she had no intention of giving up. She ran up to her father and greeted him. Meanwhile, the knights began whispering, unsure whose child it was, or why her hair was that color. The princess tells the gentleman that he must greet each other when meeting, and then asks if he has forgotten this. The nanny realized that things were getting tense, and then explained that my lady was very anxious to see him. The Duke said it was clear, but the little girl insists he's mean because he didn't even say hello to her. She also claims it's impolite. Carden, surprised, asks who she is, then says that this place is actually dangerous. He turns to his subordinates and tells them to continue training. Bardion's finest knights and the cardinal's second in command. The Duke invited little one to his study, and she agreed, then took his hand. Then they arrived, and the girl sat down in the chair. But suddenly, a maid knocked on the door and addressed his lordship, then apologized for the disturbance. The maid says she brought tea and cakes as he asked. The little girl says it looks very appetizing. The girl looked at her father, who was working. He thought for a moment, then approached her and said she could eat as much as she wanted. The princess asks if she can eat them, since they're so beautiful. He insists that the cakes must be eaten. Her father thinks people might think he's starving her. Then he suggests they live first. The main character didn't think long before asking her name. At that moment, the gentleman dropped his mug on the floor and, surprised, asked what that question meant. The girl explains that everyone calls her princess and nanny and the other maids, but she still doesn't know her own name. The princess says that even flowers have names and asks again if she has one too. Father says she has a name, and it's Emelette Bardion, means radiant with love. The girl says it's a very beautiful name and asks if he came up with it. The man says she named him that, and he loves him more than anyone else in the world. He thinks it's damn ironic, since they came up with it long before she was born. The father says that a lot has happened, and therefore he and only he is to blame for the fact that no one calls him. At this time, the main character remembered what she almost forgot, because now Carden is the main character of the book. The little girl says she likes her name and thanks her father for telling her about it. The young lady realizes that this novel is reality and everything is real, including Carden. He's an ordinary man who's suffered through a lot. Then his daughter asks her father for forgiveness, and he asks, surprised, why? The little girl explained that she apologized for everything, and he just smiled, thinking that children were so carefree. Walking down the hallway, the princess thought about how her name shone with love. Well, suddenly a maid turns to her and says that the mistress is still having fun, and reminds her that now the maids from the garden are rotting in the dungeon. The girl looked at her and then asked what difference it made to her. Hearing this, the maid became angry and asked if she felt any pity for them. The little lady asks if it should be so, because she thinks that it is not her fault. The maid screams and says she's selfish, because these people are there because of her. Then she grabs the girl by the sleeve and offers to go with her. But suddenly, Erwin saw them and asked the princess what had happened. The maid, frightened, explained that everything was fine, as she was simply adjusting the princess's cuff. In the book, Erwin was devoted to Carden, and they overcame all adversity together. Even when Carden found himself in danger due to the insidious plans of the emperor's close associates, he personally figured it out completely. This trust was earned by his keen intellect and swordsmanship. The nobles contemptuously dubbed him Carden's little dog. Erwin turned to the princess and said he was glad to meet her. Meanwhile, the girl thought about how much she definitely trusted him. Emlet greeted her father's assistant. He asked, surprised, if she remembered him. The girl insists that, of course, she remembers, since she saw him with his dad. Hearing this, the man smiles and says she's grown a lot since their last meeting. Hearing this, the main character asks in surprise if they had met before. Erwin explains that when the Duke was at war, he visited her several times and reported everything to him, and today he decided to make sure she was in good health. The little girl thought about her father's assistant wanting to visit her. Then she asked if he was going to the Duke's office. Then she offered to let him see him out. The assistant agreed, and they went off together. The girl turned to her father and told him she had brought him a gift. Her father says he asked her not to bring him flowers. She asks, surprised, why? Considering he thinks they're so beautiful and now knows how to make bouquets. The princess asks if her dad is busy, and he asks what difference it makes to her. The little girl asks if she can find out. The father says that he is not busy, and the girl says that this is wonderful and suggests having lunch together. When they arrived at the dining room, the main character looked at the amount of delicious food and thought that she should not let the delicious food intoxicate her. The girl looked carefully because she understood that the maid with brown hair must be somewhere here. The main character saw the maid and said that this was the same sister who dragged her to prison and pointed her finger at the woman. The princess points to the man and explains that this man gave her rotten cakes, and the woman did not give her firewood in the winter when she was cold. Emily says she's never seen such a delicious dinner before. Hearing this, the gentleman asks in surprise what she means. The Duke offers to explain, but the little girl says he thought he said she was worthless. The servant fell to his knees, and the master asked him to answer. Then he asked what he had been doing in his absence for 2 years, while he was supposed to be looking after the mansion. The servant claims that he was watching, and then turns to the princess and asks her to tell him when her birthday was celebrated in the winter. The main character objects and says that this didn't happen, and the man asks about her wardrobe and how she likes her new dress. The Duke says he heard enough, and then he uses his magic. Suddenly, an assistant enters the room and addresses His Majesty. The master orders his nanny to be brought here. Hearing this, the little girl was frightened, and then, screaming, she said that the nanny was her family, and she wasn't to blame for anything because she believed she was the only woman who ever loved her. Carden explained that he just wanted to ask her a few questions. A few minutes later, the nanny arrived. When the princess saw the woman, she ran up to her and hugged her. The Duke says he wants to hear only the truth. Then he asks how she managed with Emily while he was away. The woman explains that it is difficult to fit everything into one story because there were many different situations. Erwin would periodically come and report to the Duke on what was happening in the mansion. And during these moments, all was well, and they had everything they needed. But Carden was heading even further north, and the servants assumed he'd simply abandoned her. They stole all the money and forbade the nanny from having any contact with anyone. The girl recalls how they made their lives a living hell. The nanny explains that she had no way to tell the master about everything. Hearing this, the Duke smiled maliciously and ordered them to return to their room. Emily says she's full, and the nanny insists that a princess needs to eat well to grow big and healthy. Then she offers to clear away the dishes. Sitting in her room that evening, the main character thought that Carden looked very lonely. The nanny looked at the girl and then asked if she would like to take a walk in the garden. The main character thought about how late it was, and then agreed, and they went for an evening stroll together. Suddenly, the little girl saw the Duke strolling through the garden. She decided to approach him. Carden says that when he first saw her, he was very scared, because he was afraid that they would get close, and the girl would disappear just like her mother. The Duke says he was afraid she would be unhappy with him. However, the little girl objects and assures him that this is not the case. The princess asks if her father would like to see her and also talk to her and give her gifts, because this makes her happy. The girl asks what her dad thinks, because she always smiles when she's with him. And so she wishes he would do it at least sometimes. Carden, hearing this question, apologizes and then explains that he didn't understand how she felt. The little girl assures him that everything is fine, because now he's with her and they're together. That night, she was able to pull him out of the swamp, fears, and misfortunes. The main character believes that she has now become a real princess. After all the guilty were punished, and more than half of the servants, including the butler, were replaced with those who had worked under the Rhine. Emilet looked at the servants and thought that they were crying when they looked at her, because they also had a hard time. The next day, the girl drinks the milk and says it's very tasty and she likes it. The new maid says she's glad to hear it and smiles at the girl. The little girl looked at her father, and he asked in surprise why she was staring. At that moment, she thought about how she could spend more time with her father. The princess asks her father what he's doing. The man asks what difference it makes, since he thinks she won't understand anyway. Hearing this, the little girl thought he had that sour expression again. And again she was wondering what he was doing. Her father thinks she needs to hire a tutor, and tells her so. After all, she needs to be taught etiquette and everything else. However, he assumes there's no rush. The girl claims that she wants to study right now, and screaming, says that she will try very hard. The next day, the teacher came to them and said that he was glad to meet the princess, and then announced that he was Deska and would now teach her. The main character enthusiastically offers to study. Upon hearing this, the man smiles and asks if she wants to start the lesson now. Desko reports that he heard the princess is interested in history. He then asks if she knows when the Dendelicus Empire was founded. The little girl thought for a moment and then said, 8,000 years ago. The teacher smiled and said that was correct. The man says that today he will tell the story of the guardian god of the empire. But before that, he suggests hearing about the first emperor. His Majesty Dendelius was able to restore the destroyed country by uniting small villages. It was then that they met Master Fade, the one who would become the guardian god. Fade, possessing a remarkable talent for magic, helped Hisek grow into a country. But the mage touched a forbidden sacred relic and was cursed. He was unhappy for the rest of his life, but he always protected them. Hearing this, the main character remembered that he had received eternal life, but it was not a gift from God, but a true curse. The girl understands that this is just a legend, and if we assume it's true, then Fade is still alive and has spent many centuries alone, and considers it very difficult and impossible to even imagine. The teacher smiled and said that perhaps Sir Fade was protecting her too. Then he asked the princess if she had ever been to the Imperial Library. Deska reports that there are many interesting and valuable items there. He suggests they definitely go if they have time, as nobles and scholars can get passes. The man claims she can see rare books from all over the world there. He also suggests she not get lost, as she might end up there forever. The next day, the Duke asks his daughter how the lesson went and whether she found it interesting. The little girl replies that it was very interesting, and she would like to visit the Imperial Library. Her father says he just happened to be heading to the palace. The girl asks him to take her with him. The man, surprised, asks why he needs this. The princess begs and assures him that she will behave well. He says he'll think about it. Hearing this, the little girl screams and claims that her dad is the best. The next day, the nanny asks the princess if she's happy, as she thinks the young lady can't even sit still. The girl says that she is very happy, because very soon they will go to the imperial palace. Emilet tells her dad that she is ready, and at that time, she thought that this is her first time going out in public. The Duke looked at the little girl and said she was absolutely overjoyed. Then he asked what she was doing. The princess explained that her father was simply dazzling. The father takes the girl in his arms and says that the sun will soon set today, and then asks if she is going to the library. A few hours later, the protagonist looked out the window and saw a beautiful castle. Then she says there's so much new. The girl saw a bakery and asked her dad to go there sometime. He said he'd think about it if she listened. The father says they've arrived at the library. The main character, surprised, says it's really huge. The Duke tells his daughter that he has business at the palace and will return in 2 hours, and therefore asks her to behave well and obey the nanny. The princess asserts that she will behave well, as she considers herself a well-mannered girl, and then wishes her a safe journey and a quick return. Emily entered the building. She thought it was even more beautiful inside. Then she turned to the nanny and asked if all the books were there. The little girl realizes that her teacher wasn't joking, and then suggests to the nanny that they go to the room she likes. The princess realizes that there are books on raising children in the other room, and tells the nanny that she will go into the other room and read, and therefore offers to wait for her. The nanny looked at the little girl in surprise, but she insisted she'd be there. The woman suggested she come back soon, and the girl agreed, then left. Walking down the hallway, the main character realizes that the books smell very pleasant, and this smell is just like the school from her past life. The girl saw books about magic and thought that maybe she could cast spells just like Carden. The princess picked up the book and thought that the basics of magic for beginners would be perfect for her. So she decided to start with this book. Suddenly, the little girl saw a boy sleeping under the wall. She wondered who he was, because this stranger was so handsome. The young lady came closer to him, and he opened his eyes and asked in surprise who she was. The princess apologizes, then explains that she didn't mean to wake him. The stranger insists it's okay, since he's already had enough sleep. Emily looked at the guy and asked if he was an angel. The stranger smiled and said that he most likely was an angel. Hearing this, the girl thought that he had an angelic heart, and she was not mistaken. The young man says he hasn't seen children here for a long time. She asks in surprise if he's not a child. The guy says that's true, and then asks how old she is. The little girl replies that she's 6, and he says that she really is just a child. The princess asks what his name is, and at that time, it is announced that she is Emilet. The stranger tells her to call him Faye. Then he asks if he can just call her Amy. The girl offers to be friends, and he, surprised, asks if she needs anything from him. The princess asks what he is talking about, and then explains that friends are just chatting with each other and having fun together. Suddenly, the girl heard her nanny calling and then saying that it was time for her to go. The boy says that he agrees to be friends with her, and he is always in this place, and therefore suggests meeting another time. The little girl tells the nanny that she's not far from her, and the woman says her heart sank when she couldn't find her. Amy apologizes for getting a little carried away. The maid says it's time for them to go, and thinks it's impolite to keep the Duke waiting. The main character smiled as she left the library, because she had grabbed a couple of interesting books with her. The nanny asks them to wait a minute, as she wants to check if the Duke has contacted them. The little girl sees a magic ball in her hand. The magic ball is the equivalent of the telephone from her past life. But to reach someone, you need powerful magic, and Carden uses it without any problem. Suddenly, the main character overheard women talking about how she was the daughter of a dead saint, and they were all discussing this girl. The nanny and the baby walked quickly to the carriage where the Duke was waiting. He asked the girl if she had a good time and if she had done anything wrong. The father saw that she even took the book, and the girl explains that there are a lot of interesting things in it, and therefore suggests looking at how beautiful the cover is. The Duke looked at the nobles and said they had flocked there like flies. Then he ordered them to leave. The daughter turns to her dad and suggests calling her Amy. He looks at her in surprise, and she explains that it's her nickname. The gentleman asks why she suddenly decided to do this. The girl insists she likes it that way, and then announces that she wants to learn more magic. The next day, a new teacher came and greeted the princess, and then explained that from that day on, he would teach her magic. The teacher said his name was Teto, and he was an advanced mage. The princess needed to win the teacher back, and when she saw Dad, she asked if he had anything else to do. The Duke suggests not paying attention, but simply listening to the teacher. Teto suggests first finding out if she has magical powers. The little girl, surprised, asks what that box is in his hands. The teacher explains that this device detects the presence of mana in the body. Then, he suggests simply placing your hand on it and finding out. The man says that everything is correct, because with the help of the cube, they will find out whether there is enough mana to use magic. Teto reports that the device will change color according to her magical power, as advanced mages typically fill about half of the cube. For beginning magicians, the cube will be slightly stained underneath. The girl turns to her father and asks how much he has, and suggests trying the cube. However, the Duke refuses, and the young lady asks in surprise why. Hearing this, the teacher smiled and explained to the princess that if his lordship touched the device, they would no longer be able to measure her strength. The Duke says that if he touches it, it will shatter into pieces, believing that such a trinket cannot measure his power. Tito insists that this is indeed the case, as the device simply won't withstand it, and it can only be measured in a magic tower. The girl says she wants to try it. Then she picks up the cube and wonders if she might break it, because she wants it to be really cool. Holding the cube in her hand, the young lady saw that it was unchanged. The teacher encouraged her and suggested she not be upset, as he believed she apparently possessed divine power, and the cube wouldn't reveal it. From birth, everyone possesses magical or divine powers. A person with a large amount of mana becomes a mage, while one with powerful divine energy becomes a priest. Both priest and magician are equally powerful, so there is no discrimination. Divine and magical powers are inherently incompatible. Children who turn 10 years old each year attend a ceremony where they receive a special mark. It is needed for emergency situations, since a magician can heal people with magical powers, and a priest can heal people with divine powers. At this time, the main character thought that she was somehow reminiscent of a blood type. The teacher believes that if she does not have magical power, then there is divine power, and they cannot coexist. The girl, surprised, asks if she has divine powers. Hearing this, the teacher says that Reina was, after all, a great saint. The princess realizes that her mother, whom she resembles so much, called her radiant with love. And so she reflects that the older she gets, the more she resembles her. The girl asks how she can measure force then. Her father insists there's no need and suggests looking at a cube. Suddenly, the group's color changed, and the little girl excitedly asked if it was mixed. The teacher looked at the Duke and thought that even he was surprised. The princess asks the teacher what's wrong with her. He objects and says everything is fine. She just needs to figure things out first. Tito explains that, for starters, her power is many times greater than that of a high-level mage. However, he's never seen mana come in multiple colors before. The little girl asks if everyone has their own color. The teacher insists that they do, because no two people have the same color. At this time, the main character does not understand what to do, and then she looked at her hands and thought that she really wanted to master magic. The girl realizes she didn't even know this would happen. The teacher turns to her and tells her not to worry. The magician says that he will return to the tower and sit down with the books in order to find and read all the works on this topic. The little girl said that this was great, and at that moment, she thought about how his eyes lit up when he started talking about books. The Duke took the baby in his arms and said that no matter how you looked at it, she looked just like him. But most of all, it was her eyes. Emily asks her dad if he likes it. He objects and says he does, very much so. The main character noticed that her father was smiling, and the gentleman was telling her not to worry about all the little things. The Duke says that he thinks that soon they will receive a letter from the magic tower, and for the first time, he sees magic in different colors. Her father said that, naturally, he would go with her. Meanwhile, the young lady realized that her father was comforting her. Carden announces that it's time for lunch, and upon hearing this, the girl screams and says that she, too, is very hungry. The Duke was right. By the end of the second day, a letter arrived. The tower's caretaker invited her to test her magical power. When the princess entered the palace, she was very surprised, because it really was golden. Hijack, the first emperor, and Faith, the first overseer. They worked most on the construction of the imperial palace and the magic tower. The former blue palace was destroyed to mark the beginning of a new era. In its place, Hijack erected a palace of glittering gold, and Fade built a black tower nearby, seemingly absorbing the light. The main character wondered how they had been able to place the palace and the tower so close together. Yet the tower seemed somehow lonely, detached. The father tells his daughter that they have already arrived. She, surprised, says that it is amazing. The Duke suggests she leave it alone, lest she get stuck here forever. He thinks her favorite cookies aren't there, so it's not worth poking around. At this point, the main character thought he was acting like a child. Then she said she was really scared in this place. Her father thinks she has a stupid expression on her face. The girl explains that she was simply imitating him and assumes that's what happened. The teacher turns to his lordship and greets him. The girl looks at all these people and says that this place is very noisy. The father says he can silence everyone. The teacher suggests following him, then says the girl might feel a little seasick. When they entered the office, the little girl saw a lot of scattered books, and she became curious about what had happened. Amy hugs her father and says she's not afraid at all. Suddenly, a man turns to them and smiles. Then he says she's the spitting image of the Duke as a child. Carden addresses the man and calls him teacher, then asks how he is doing. Hearing this, the main character doesn't understand how such a young man can be a teacher. However, she suggests that powerful magic can slow the aging process. The teacher says that honored guests have arrived, and he hasn't even offered them a seat. Then he asked them to forgive him for the mess and invites them to settle in. Tato brought the teacher a box. The Duke, surprised, says that this is it. But the girl interrupts him and says that it is like the box that Tito's teacher gave her. The man asks her if she wants to look at the ball and also asks what color she sees. The little girl replies that there's no color there. The teacher agrees and explains that if the Duke or Tato take it, nothing will happen. Maybe she asks if she'll support him a little, and then gives the girl the ball. The protagonist realizes that if it were dangerous, her father would have stopped her. Then she picks up the ball. Suddenly, the color in the ball changed. Her father looked at her in surprise, and the teacher said that, judging by everything, it was difficult to verify, but she was a princess. The man explains that she possesses two powers simultaneously. After all, the orb measures not magical power, but divine power, and it is used in the church. The Duke explains that this is why he doesn't react to their magicians, and then takes the ball, in which the color wasn't even present. The teacher claims that since it looks like this, she has both powers. The man says he studied ancient treatises and decided it was worth taking the orb with him, and so he would never have believed it if he hadn't seen it for himself. At this time, the main character realized that she possessed both magical and divine powers. The father asks what would happen if they were united in one body. The teacher replies that it's obvious he has no idea, since he's the first one he's seen of anyone like that. Amy doesn't understand why this self-confidence is happening, and thinks it's some kind of nonsense. The man says that if anyone finds out about this, nothing good will come of it, and the imperial family will want to get their hands on her first. No one in the world can possess two powers. That's the law of nature. And if this becomes known, even other countries will want to subjugate it. The teacher says that only 4 people know about this right now, and they can try to keep it a secret, but only temporarily. The gentleman announces that everything will come to light at the 10-year ceremony. On this day, absolutely all children receive marks. The child with the highest status becomes the representative. Her father understands that all attention will then be focused on her, and the world will learn of her true power. After all, she is the Duke's daughter, and this news will spread across the continent. The teacher turns to Tato and asks for ideas. Tato asks the teacher if the princess can hold the balloon up again. The father, surprised, asks why she keeps repeating the word. The man explains that if you look closely at the crystal, it's as if black light has surrounded the purple, and the purple dots are floating in the black gas. The black gas is magical power, and the purple circles are divine. The girl wonders if that means she has more magic. Teto suggests training her magical powers until she fully masters them. He suggests starting with the basics. The little girl wondered if she could then use both powers. Then she picked up the ball and looked at it. The Duke asks if this will pose a problem for the child's body. The teacher says he'd like to test something. The teacher turns to Teto and asks if he'll show Lady Bardion his laboratory. He's sure she'll like it. Hearing this, the girl realized they were sending her away so they could talk without her. Her father wondered why his lab. Teto showed the girl his laboratory and welcomed her. The room was in disarray. He warned her not to touch any liquids. A few minutes later, the man asks the princess if she can come to him for a moment. The girl immediately approached the teacher and asked in surprise what it was. He offered to take a look, as he had made it himself a long time ago. The little girl says it's a very beautiful thing, and he suggests turning the stone in the center. When the princess touched the medallion, she saw butterflies flying out of it. This surprised her, and then she asked if they were real. The man smiled and said that it wasn't quite right, because he had sealed a little bit of magic in the necklace, and it would soon disappear. The teacher says you can place another spell in it, but you need to learn magic first. Only then can you do whatever you want with it. Amy asks, surprised, if he's giving her the necklace. He says he is, because he thinks it's practically worthless anyway. The teacher informs her that a protective spell is also sealed there, but it can only be used once. Therefore, she believes it might come in handy someday. The girl thanks the teacher for the wonderful gift. Hearing this, he says he'll show her something else now. Suddenly, the main character heard a voice out of nowhere, saying that he was making a lot of noise and not letting her rest for a day. He didn't understand what he wanted this time. The princess wondered where the voice was coming from, knowing there was no one else in the room except her. The girl asks who said that, and the voice asks again why she's looking back. The little girl realized that this voice was talking about her, and she understands that Teacher Teto would not joke like that. Emily heard the question why she came here, since this voice thought that she couldn't hear anything anyway. The main character claims that she hears a voice, and upon hearing this voice, she was very surprised, and then says that she did not answer him and asks if she really hears it. The little girl claims that she hears him and doesn't know where he's speaking from, and then she's interested in the question of who he is. The voice tells her to look to the left and straight ahead. The young lady sees a flower in a pot, but at this moment, she doesn't understand what kind of nonsense this is. Teto asks the princess if she looked at the market, and then explains that this flower grows only in the northern part of their country. His peculiarity is a strange swaying from side to side and asking if it is cute. The girl asks if this flower can talk. Hearing this, the teacher smiles and says it's unlikely, but people try to grow them for their beauty. The man says that the difficulty is that they grow mainly in the north, because this is the only place they like. The little girl thought that this is where Carden periodically goes to suppress monsters. Northern monsters called Voluma live in groups. Every few years, their numbers increase significantly. Because of this, constant cleansing raids are necessary. Their main advantage is their steel-hard skin. Volumes have been discovered that have learned to use tools, and against them, one cannot relax for a second. Only the most powerful mages and priests can participate in the raid. The protagonist understands that Carden will soon be leaving again, and she doesn't want to be alone. The teacher looked at the upset girl and asked what was wrong. She assured him everything was fine, but then heard a voice saying that it was okay to talk nonsense about him, because it was annoying. The little girl understands that this is a furious voice that only she can hear. The voice says it now understands why everyone ignored it. Teto asks if she liked the market, and if so, offers to take it and take care of it. Emilet objects and explains that it's not that she liked him, but the voice asks her to take him away, since he doesn't even need to be fed. Flower assures her that he will be faithful and invites her to go together. The teacher explains that he's easy to care for and then says he can carry him if the baby is having a hard time. But she assures him everything is fine. The man says that it's wonderful that she liked this flower, and if she starts clapping her hands in front of him, he will dance with joy. Hearing this, the flower says that the teacher is a bastard, and he will never forget this humiliation. The teacher says that the market bud looks like it is about to bloom, but no one has ever seen it bloom. The little girl asks in surprise why this is so, and the teacher explains that he tried several methods, but it didn't work. Tato believes that she can try herself, because they say that then even her dream can come true. At this time, the father and the teacher enter the room and apologize for being so late. Emily ran up to her father and then hugged him. The Duke asked if she had fun, and the little girl assured him it was great. Carden looked at the flower and asked what it was. She explained that the teacher gave it to her and asked if it was beautiful. The Duke glared at the man and said he was doing something he hadn't been asked to do again. Then he asked how he dared give his daughter presents. The teacher turns to the princess and says that he needs to tell her something. The man reports that the baby has magical powers that surpass even advanced magicians, but to use them, one needs to learn and practice. The teacher says that he would like to offer her training in the magic tower since she is a newbie and therefore will definitely attract attention. The master thinks the tower will be the safest place. The father believes that if she agrees, she will face many difficulties, and therefore there is no need to force her. Emilette assures her father that everything is fine because she wants to study to protect her dad. The Duke agrees with the little girl, and then assures her that he will do everything to help her. Lying in bed, the girl hears a voice telling her to give him water, because he knows what she hears. The main character, a wildflower, says that because of him, she doesn't get enough sleep every night. The nanny came into the room and asked the princess if she was awake, and also wondered if she was talking to the flower again. The woman smiled, and the girl thought she wouldn't have laughed so much if she'd heard him. After several days of conversation, the main character learned a lot. For example, the market is not just flowers, but fairies of nature, who are locked inside the bud by a strange force that came from nowhere. Flower says that he will do anything just to get her to get him out of there. The princess asks him not to cry, because she promises to do something about this curse. The nanny tells the girl it's time to change and takes her away from the flower. The little girl asks the market for forgiveness, because she knows that the lady of the Bardion family does not have a minute of free time. The nanny asked what outfit the princess would wear today. The little girl remembered that her father had given her a dress and thought how nice it was to receive gifts from him. Much has changed since her father returned, as the main character feels like she's in charge. There are no more of the old servants left, and they are no longer ignored. And stale bread and rotten soup are already a thing of the past. But the one who has changed the most is Dad. The Duke turns to his daughter and says that she is early today, and the girl understands that her relationship with Carden is the best. Father says that he received a letter from the magic tower, and her training begins in 2 days. The little girl asks who the rest of the letters are for, because she understands that there are a lot of them. The man said that of course she did, and when she heard this, she was surprised and asked if it was true. The girl became curious about where these letters came from, and then she began to read. In all the letters, they praised her in general terms. It was something like this: "She is young and already talented." The Marquise writes that she would very much like to talk with the lady, and therefore hopes that she will accept her invitation. The main character understands that she is only 6 years old, and does not understand what one can talk to her about. The father says that if she wants, she can go, and the little girl became curious whether her father will definitely let her go if she agrees. Emily thought about how she wasn't so simple after all, and then she protested, saying she wasn't interested. Dad said there was nothing he could do, and then threw the letter away. The Duke believes that it is not necessary to answer these letters. One girl says that her dad is cool. The main character thought she would definitely cry if she really were 6 years old. The princess said she almost forgot, and then gave her dad a gift. While meeting the servants, the girl discovered a new hobby: baking. When she tried baking, she never imagined it would be so much fun. And so, as soon as she had a free minute, she ran to the kitchen. The cook told the princess that the cookies were ready. However, the girl objects and says that it is too early to take it out until it turns brown, and therefore suggests waiting a little longer. The young lady understands that she certainly didn't do it as neatly as her uncle the cook, but she's still happy with what she has. For Carden, and said that they were a little burnt, but still delicious, since she and the chef had already tried them. The princess apologizes and explains that he was so greedy that he had to give her a treat. Her father thinks nothing serious happened, as sharing is important. The next day, the main character took her flower and went to greet teacher Teto. Emily said that dad was busy today, so Erwin brought him. The teacher happily greeted the princess. Usually the students live in the tower, and since she was only 6 years old and from a noble family, she was allowed to attend classes twice a week. The little girl understands that her dad has obviously taken care of everything because she will always be accompanied by an assistant. The girl put a flower on the table, and the guy thought she liked it. The princess smiled and agreed with him, and at that time, she thought that he had begged her to take him and had not stopped talking. Market says he hasn't been there for a long time, and the teacher says that today they will learn the basics of mana flow control. Teto explains that he made the doll from a tree sensitive to magic, and therefore thinks that it would be better to practice on something concrete and tangible first. The man says he put a lot of effort into this doll. The little girl asks in surprise if he made it himself. The teacher smiled and said it was nothing special, but the voice said he must have been trying so hard to finish it that he even forgot to eat. The little girl asks if he forgot to eat while making the doll. Hearing this, the teacher, surprised, asks how she knew about it. Emile explains that the market told her this. The man smiles and says he's a smart little flower and thinks it's adorable. The main character understands that this is a completely expected reaction because she understands that there is nothing surprising in the fact that a child communicates with a flower. But what if he does the same? Market smiled and said that only she could hear him. Tito suggested demonstrating the doll first. The girl says in surprise that this doll is moving, and the teacher suggests directing a flow of magic into the object she wants to move. Tito says that with a little practice, she will be able to control it freely, and then suggests that she do the same with the doll. The man asks her to concentrate on the doll and transfer its energy to it. To do this, she should close her eyes and imagine a long thread emanating from her body. She had to wrap this thread around the doll. Within a minute, the doll was in the ceiling, and the teacher happily announced that she had succeeded. The girl thought that she didn't want to break through the ceiling and doesn't even understand how it happened. Tato thinks that this is amazing because she has a lot of magical power and therefore suggests trying again. The little girl asks for forgiveness and explains that she didn't do it on purpose, and the man tells her not to worry because mastering magic requires time and practice. The teacher says she can take this doll and practice at home. The young lady assures her that she will try very hard. Erwin asks the girl how her lesson went, since he was waiting for her outside the door the whole time. The main character realizes that during her very first lesson, she made 5 holes in the ceiling, and then replies that it's fine, and he suggests going home. The princess objects and says that she also wanted to go to the library. Emily was in a hurry to get to the library, but the assistant told her not to hurry so much. The girl was wondering if he was sleeping by the window today, because she was very happy that they would finally see each other. Erwin doesn't understand what the princess is looking for and asks about it. She claims there's no one there. The man, surprised, asks what she's talking about. The lady explains that the last time she came to this place, she made friends with a boy. He said he always sits in this place, but apparently not today. The man offers the lady to wait a minute, and she agrees. The little girl started reading the book and thought that it was very complicated, and she didn't understand how the fairies read them. She became curious where he was. Erwin tells the princess that he found a pen and paper and believes that if her friend did not come, then she should leave him a note. The assistant explains that when he returns, he'll realize she was looking for him. The girl thinks it's a great idea and thanks him. Emilette wrote that every time she had classes in the tower, she would look into the library. The doll began to dance, and the flower, smiling, asked what kind of dance it was, because he thought he could do better. The princess irritably tells him to shut up. Her father informs her that if this can be called talent, then she is a true genius. The little girl realizes that she has been training for 3 days and has made no progress, and then tells her dad that, actually, for her age, this is an excellent result. The girl asks if he has any idea how tired she is. Her father says he's thinking about learning to dance like that himself. Emilette thinks that it's enough to mock her like this, and therefore suggests that she try it herself. The father controlled the doll with magic, and the little girl told him to stop fooling around. The Duke says that it is really difficult to control him, and the daughter tells her father to wait, because she will definitely become stronger than him, since she does not even intend to give up. The assistant wishes the princess good luck in her classes, and the girl thought about how she had been practicing this strange dance for days on end. The teacher greets the princess and asks if she's been studying at home. The little girl assures her that she's been working hard. Tato suggests that after the lesson, they look at what she has learned and asks her to wait, because he has to bring some tools. When the little girl was left alone, she became curious whether the fairy had read the note, and she suggested that she might be able to meet him after class. The main character reflects on the fact that she should have baked him cookies because she wanted to make him happy. The girl suggests that maybe something happened, and he didn't receive the note, and therefore, as soon as she is free, she needs to check if the note is still there. The princess realized that the teacher had been gone for a long time and decided to look for him. Suddenly, the main character saw the teacher sleeping near the closet. At first, the girl thought he had fallen into eternal sleep, but then realized he was breathing. Emilet understands that he is sleeping. It's not surprising because the teacher is always so tired. Suddenly, the girl saw a fairy who greeted her. He said he had received her note and asked if he was disturbing the lesson. The little girl says that of course he didn't interfere, because she thinks that he came just in time because she missed him. The guy says that he is glad to hear this, and she asks how he ended up here, because the tower is guarded and Erwin is standing at the door. Faye touches the teacher and says that she hopes he doesn't wake up soon. The girl asks in surprise if the teacher fell asleep because of him, and in response, he only smiled. The main character thinks he's just a genius, and then asks why he did it. However, she assumes he's having pleasant dreams. The boy asks Amy if she wants to play, and also asks if she has ever been to Vincent Square. The young lady insists she's never been there, but teacher Deska told her about it. After all, it's the largest shopping area located right in the heart of the capital. The sellers try to stand out by offering a wide variety of goods, and naturally, the girls wanted to visit there. The young lady thinks that maybe she should go with him to this place, and then asks what they should do with Erwin. Faye assures her that no one will even notice that they are gone, and then takes her hand. In a minute, they found themselves in the square, and the sellers were shouting that they had the best goods. Emmy, surprised, asks the guy if he can teleport, because she sees that their clothes have changed. The boy says he can do it, and thinks he hasn't done anything special. She understands that he is a true genius. Faye invites her to look around, and she agrees, and asks where to start. The guy asks Emmy to slow down, but the girl wants to see everything. The street was crowded, and she asks the guy if he sees a shop that sells paintings. The main character went to this shop and saw that all the paintings depicted the same person. Faye says that this is Duke Bardion, and most often they draw someone famous and important to the residents, and therefore it is not even necessary to draw from life. The boy says it's the first time he's seen something like this with his own eyes. And the little girl saw one portrait that didn't look like her, and she wondered who it was. The seller greeted the young guests and asked if they liked the portrait of Supreme Mage Fade. The man says that many people can't pass by him and asks if they will take this painting because he will give them a discount. Faye offered Emmy a choice, considering it a gift from him. By this time, the little girl already knew which painting she wanted and was overjoyed when she heard he was buying her one. Suddenly, a guy with red hair walked past them and pushed Emmy, and then angrily asked how she dared to touch his palm. The princess realized that it was only a touch on the shoulder, and the stranger was telling her to apologize immediately. The girl apologized, but the guy thought she was being rude. The main character doesn't understand why he's acting this way, but then insists that she apologized as he asked. The young man ran toward her, but suddenly tripped and fell. The fairy suggested that she go already. The red-haired boy screams and tells her not to go anywhere and calls her a little upstart because he won't just leave it like that. Within a minute, they had already returned to the library, and the main character saw that the teacher was still sleeping and then asked when he would wake up. Faye says that she doesn't know for sure, and then tells the girl that they will see each other again, and leaves. Lying on the bed, the little girl thought that she was very bored, and the flower said that it agreed with her. 3 days have passed since she last saw him in Fayem. She knows that Carden is still in the imperial palace, and she's afraid of being punished again. The teacher claims that he is simply tormented by insomnia, and therefore asks for forgiveness, since there is no excuse. The little girl thinks that nothing terrible happened because she understands that anything can happen. When the father looked at the portrait, he asked what it was, and the assistant explained that this man looked like him, the Duke. Amy explains that this is a gift from the Archmage, and she thinks that it's not even a lie because she's a fairy mage. The princess is wondering when Carden will be free because she knows that after the trip, a lot of paperwork has accumulated and the nanny has gone somewhere. The main character assumes that the Duke must have a mountain of books and then asks the market if she can look for anything about him. The maids greet the princess and wish her good morning, and the flower asks if she can walk more slowly. The little girl reports that they have come to the library of Duke Bardion. When they went inside, she realized that there was no one there and it was also dark. Suddenly, the girl heard someone snoring and she became interested in who it was because she thought that this person was at work. Amy rang the bell and then said that everyone was working tirelessly and he decided to sleep. She asked what kind of negligent attitude this was. The guy woke up and then looked at her in surprise and asked if she really was a princess. The little girl asks if she looks like anyone else, and he smiles and says that he just didn't expect to see her in this place. The young man explains that usually almost no one comes to this place and then asks if she can spare him. The guy suggests pretending she didn't see anything. The main character agrees and says that's okay, but only if he helps her. The girl explains that she's looking for something about the market. He looks at the flower and says he understands, then leaves. The main character says that she has only been to the Imperial Library and that this place is also very beautiful because there are many books, and therefore she thinks that she should visit this place more often. Emmy tells him not to sleep on the job anymore and not to turn off the lights. The man gave her a book, and she, surprised, asks if he really found what she was looking for. The guy smiled and said that this was the only book about markets. Market is a mysterious plant of the north. The little girl understands that there is only one book that she would look for in this library until old age. The market opened only half a century ago, and the main character thanked him for helping her. The girl was surprised because she didn't understand where he had gone, and the flower suggested that maybe he had gone to the toilet. The princess began reading the book and realized there was no mention of a curse. Market said it was clear to him and believed there was apparently nothing that could be done. The main character thinks that maybe there is something else to be found in the palace, and therefore tells the market not to be upset. Erwin entered the room and asked if the lady missed the Duke. Emilette replies that of course, because he works so much, and they haven't seen each other for several days. The assistant asks if she wants to join him. The little girl is surprised, knowing he works at the palace. Then she says her dad is very busy. Erwin is sure that he will be glad to see her, and then offers to go with him. When they arrived at the palace, the little girl thought that it was even more beautiful up close, because everything was in gold. The assistant reports that they are almost there, and the girl is surprised because the statues were made of gold. Erwin says that the current emperor likes this kind of thing, and the girl became interested in who rules now. In the book, there were 2 princes and a princess. All of them were claiming the throne, and it was expected that the first prince or princess would replace him. The main character understands that this is definitely not the stupid second prince, and the assistant informs that they are already there. Suddenly, the little girl saw a bright color and people working on a report. The girl looked at these people and realized that they were office zombies, just like in her past life, because everyone was so busy and she didn't understand why they brought her here. Suddenly, the Duke enters the room and asks why they are frozen, and also inquires if they have too much free time. When the little girl saw her dad, she said that she missed him and then hugged him. The man asks where the child is from in this place, and the daughter says that her dad is very busy and asks if she can stay there. Father says that of course it is possible, and at this time she thinks about what he should think about the workers. The princess looked at the pile of papers and asked if he needed to sort it out. Dad said he had nothing left to do. The little girl asks when he'll finish this work. He replies that he's been doing it for a couple of days and asks how much she missed him. The girl says that she missed him very much because she felt so lonely without him. Suddenly, a woman with long red hair enters the room and asks if Carden works so hard. The main character became curious about this woman, and she remembers that it was Morgis. Neen is another villain. As in all such stories, Carden and Reyna had to face many trials that they overcame to be together. 70% of the problems were caused by Morgis. She fell in love with Carden at first sight. But he didn't even want to hear her banal flirting. This hurt the pride of the narcissistic girl. The little girl realized that this woman had already become an empress. Margise asks the Duke if he has a minute, because she has tea that perfectly relieves fatigue. Carden refused, explaining that he was not in the mood for tea right now. The lady looked at the girl and asked if this was the very young lady everyone was talking about. The Empress says that this girl is exactly the same age as her son, and rumors say that she is a very smart girl. The Duke turns to Her Majesty and says that he didn't think she cared about gossip, and then asks if she has anything better to do. Hearing this, the little girl does not understand how one can address the Empress in this way. The woman says that she didn't expect him to think about her so much, and therefore really appreciates his concern. Margise says that she would like to see the young lady in her palace as soon as possible, and then leaves, explaining that it is time for her to go. The Duke says that she got him, and at that time, the little girl thought that she was worried about her dad, but he was very cool. Carden tells his assistant that this woman is nothing but trouble, and therefore asks him not to let her near his girl. The Duke turns to the workers and says that's all for today, and they can go free. And tomorrow they won't leave until they finish their work. The girl looked at them and thought that they were so funny. Erwin smiled and suggested that she shouldn't judge a book by its cover, because in fact, these are the best minds of the Empire. Father says that they would be better if they didn't make noise. But the little girl thinks that they simply love him. Sitting in the carriage, the main character felt tired and asked her father if they had arrived yet. He replied that they hadn't yet. The father says that he will take a short walk around the square and invites her to come home if she is tired. Emmy objects and claims that she wants to be with him, and then they go for a walk. The little girl ran forward, and when she looked back, she told her dad to go faster, but suddenly she pushed someone and fell. The girl asked for forgiveness because she didn't notice him at all. The princess looked closer at the guy, and she recognized that golden hair, because in this world such people are rarely seen. The assistant asks Milady what happened and why she fell. She explains that she accidentally collided with the boy, then looked at his father and asked what was wrong. The gentleman says that it doesn't matter, and then he looked at the trail of the guy who was running away. Dad invites the little girl to take his hand, and at that time, she thought that the boy reminds her of something, but her father says that he is just like a dog. Hearing this, the girl objects and asks if she likes calling her daughter an animal. He explains that's not what he meant and objects. The main character doesn't understand how he dared, and the assistant thinks that maybe the Duke wanted to say that she is a cute puppy. The girl says she doubts he ever mentioned that. The man says he doesn't see the difference between a puppy and a dog. Emmy says that this time she forgives, and therefore suggests that she be glad that she is such a good daughter. The Duke says that he is very glad, and then suggests going along the alley because they will end up in the square. The father says that she won't get home if she lets go of his hand. Upon hearing this, the little girl held on to him even tighter. The girl invites her dad to look at the decorations near the market, and she was also surprised because this flower was a different color. Emily asks her dad where he is dragging her, since she didn't ask to buy anything. When they entered the store, the salesperson looked at them and thought they looked like ragamuffins. Then he asked them what they wanted. The little girl points at a flower and says that this is a market. The man smiled and said that they wouldn't be able to earn enough for him in a year, and then told them to get lost because they would have problems if even a leaf fell. The main character looked at this man and thought that he didn't even understand. Leaving the store, the salesman cries and asks for forgiveness because he did not recognize such important guests. The Duke suggests that his assistant change the salesman and then turns to his daughter and offers to help her carry the flower. Amy looked at the flower and realized that it was not talking to her. She began to wonder if it had died. Dad asks if she wants to go shopping, and the girl replies that she doesn't want to, but only wants to go to the square. The little girl excitedly says that there are a lot of flowers, and the assistant explains that the street is being decorated for the upcoming Harvest Festival. The Harvest Festival is a very memorable day for Carden and Reina. After all, it was then that they went on their first date, just like any other couple. Erwin thinks there will be even more people. The father tells his daughter that if she doesn't let go of his hand today, he'll take her to the party. The baby assured that she would never let go of her dad and then hugged him. The girl tells the market that she is already home, and he asks if she had fun without him. The little girl says that she has no time for that now, and then suggests looking at who she brought. The main character explains that she stumbled upon it by accident and bought it, but he doesn't answer. Market turns to the flower and asks how it is, and then offers to say something. Emmy thought it would be better if she brought some water. But suddenly, the flower began to speak, and she was delighted because it could hear her. This flower explains that he did not think that this girl was talking to him. Market wonders if an evil spirit made him like this too. Flower says a strange fog appeared on the way to the northern mountains. The princess understands that this spirit is here again, and she just made inquiries today. The market is found only in the northern lands, and the evil spirit is also from the north, just like the volumes. According to the history book of the empire, when the boulders first appeared 300 years ago, the entire continent was plunged into chaos. Only magical and holy powers had an effect, so priests and magicians united to destroy them. But one day, Carden and Reyna discovered their lair. The source of the volumes struck fear into everyone. The main character read in the book that this place was Mount Moy, and she does not understand why she has such a feeling. The girl says that there are some strange words written there, and the flower says that these words are their language, and they mean find someone. The princess realized that she needed to find the author of the book, and to do this, she needed to ask the librarian or the bookstore owner about it. Flower tells her not to worry because he is sure they will find it. The maid tells my lady that dinner is ready, and she says that she will come now. And then the girl takes some flowers with her in order to give them water. Amy tells her dad that her new friend's name is Johnny because he's talkative. The Tato says that she clearly has a talent for magic, and the girl asks if he thinks it just happened to her, and then explains that she practiced a lot. The main character reflects on the fact that she will not give up even if everyone laughs. Emmylette reports that teacher Tato says she has too much mana. Father says it's strange because he seems to have more mana, but this has never happened before, and then suggests they practice. The daughter asks in surprise if he wants to do it right now. The teacher snapped his fingers and said it was the formula for using magic. Seeing this, the girl remembered what Carden did when he was angry. The princess thinks that she can do the same, and then says that it's cool and she wants to learn faster. The teacher says that she has a good attitude, and he likes it, and then smiles. But when the girl left the room, the assistant asked if the lesson was fun. She said it was very fun, and she learned something interesting. The girl suggests going home quickly and practicing, since teacher Teto was so surprised. They went outside, and a woman with a black veil on her face approached the princess. The woman announces that she is the queen's personal servant, and then says that Her Majesty would like to see her. Erwin apologizes and then says that the lady has another meeting now, and they are in a hurry. Jenna says she already knows that she goes to the Duke right after her magic lesson. Hearing this, the girl thought that this woman was following her. Jane turns to the princess and asks if Lady Bordian really lied, and is now being rude to the queen with her refusal. Emmy, hearing this, agreed to meet halfway, and the Empress's maid thanked her for her understanding, because the queen would be glad. Erwin asks the girl in surprise if everything is really okay, since he knows that he can still refuse. The baby assures that she is fine, and asks to believe in her, because everything will be fine. Jenna says that the palace is not far away, and so she prepared the carriage. Hearing this, the princess thought that she had decided to make fun of her, and therefore she became interested in what this lady really wanted. The maid approaches Her Majesty and informs her that Lady Bardian has arrived. The Empress smiled and said that today was clearly a special day, because it was an honor for her to receive such an outstanding guest, and to thank them for coming. The princess also thanked Her Majesty for the invitation, and at that time realized that this woman was looking down on the cardinal's daughter. Morgott says that she doesn't know her tastes, and that's why the table is very varied, and that's why she hopes that she will like it. The girl reflects on the fact that the Empress wanted to talk to her, and then says that she is very grateful. Her Majesty smiled and explained that she only wanted to have tea with her and chat as if she were her own daughter. The princess understands that she wanted to do this because she is the daughter of a cardinal, and when she tried the dessert, she realized that it was very tasty. The Empress invites her to eat to her health and feel at home, but at this time the little girl thought that she was infuriated by how delicious everything was. The main character reflects on the fact that children are very easy to please. Suddenly, a boy with hair the same color as the Empress ran up to them, and the woman called him a prince. The guy explains that he immediately came running when he heard that she called him, and even ran away from training. Her Majesty smiled and suggested that he be more careful with the sword, and then said that he had come just in time, because a young lady his age had dropped in to see her. The Empress invites them to meet and informs them that this is Lady Emelette, the daughter of the Duke of Bardillon. When the little girl looked at the guy and realized that it was him she had recently pushed, she thought that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The prince says that it is an honor for him to meet this lady, and then announces that he is Neister. The girl says that she is glad to meet you, and her name is Emelette, and then looks angrily at this guy. The Empress says that they look wonderful together, and at this time the main character realized why she called her. The prince turns to his mother and asks if he can show the lady their flower meadow. She says it's a wonderful idea, and then asks what Lady Bardillon thinks. Emmy says that sounds good, and the Empress turns to Sir Erwin and asks if he could spare her a minute. Erwin apologizes to Her Majesty, as he should be with the lady. She says the clearing is clearly visible from this spot, then asks if he really doubts the imperial palace is safe. The princess assures Erwin that everything is fine, and quietly whispers that she is stronger than him, and then they leave. The main character was surprised to think that she had never seen such a plant. The guy says she's such a stupid, rude girl. The surprised girl asks who's stupid, and then suggests that maybe he's stupid. Hearing this, the prince asks in surprise how she dares to address him so disrespectfully. The girl explains that the way he treats her is the same way she treats him, and then says that he can even complain to his mother. Neister angrily asks how she, the daughter of the Duke of Bardillon, can be like this, and then rolls up her sleeves and says that she asked for it herself. The guy looked at the girl in surprise, and then asked if he told her to fall on her knees, because if she didn't, that boy would suffer. And at this time, the main character realized that she felt as if he was not a child at all. Suddenly, a servant announces the Emperor's arrival. His Majesty addresses the Empress and says the weather is simply wonderful, but its beauty outshines even the sun. Morgott tells her husband that she thought he had a lot to do, and he explains what all the vassals did, and then asks whose child it is. The baby announces that she is Emelette Bardillon, greets His Majesty, and wishes that the sun always illuminates his path. Hearing this, the Emperor, surprised, asks if Duke Bardillon is also here. The woman explains that she only invited the ladies. In the original, the Emperor was already old and needed a successor, but it doesn't seem like the country has an empress. And after her in line was the first prince, and so this great line was supposed to continue. The Emperor sat down on a chair and ordered them to bring him more desserts, while the Empress hugged him and invited him to see how their Neister and lady looked together. Her Majesty assures that they get along wonderfully, just like she and him. Upon hearing this, the girl thought that it was enough to talk nonsense, and she would like to return home as soon as possible. Suddenly, the Duke came to them, and the maids say that they were not warned about his visit. Everyone was surprised when the cardinal arrived. He greeted the imperial family. His Majesty said that he had not seen the Duke for a long time, and then looked angrily at the servants. The father turns to his daughter, and then extends his hand and tells her to come with him. The little girl ran up to her father and then hugged him. Carden addressed His Majesty and informed him that his daughter must have had a wonderful time at his palace. The Duke says that today their family has more important matters, and the Empress must not have known, so she invited Emelette. Having heard this, the girl does not understand how her father can speak like this to the imperial family. The father explains that his daughter has a busy schedule and hopes that they will take this into account and not allow such an oversight in the future. The Duke turns to his daughter and says that it is time for them to go, and then they leave. Carden asks the girl what she was doing there, and then reminds her that he told her not to talk to strangers. Emmy says that the Emperor and Empress are higher in status than her father, and the man insists that he won. The Duke turns to Erwin and tells him to resolve the issue of the imperial family differently from now on, and to take responsibility upon himself. However, the little girl was wondering if they would definitely not be punished for disrespect, because this question worried her very much. Emmy hugs her dad tightly and says that her dad won, and then asks how he knew she was there. Erwin explains that he sent a message through a magical transmitter, and the little girl realized that he was so skilled in magic. The teacher looked at the girl in surprise, and she thought that maybe she shouldn't have asked that. The man explains that 8 years have passed since His Majesty ascended the throne, as he told about the exam that all candidates must take. The candidate must leave the empire for a year to become rich on his own and bring glory to the empire. The princess and the second prince went to the south and west, respectively, and the first prince went to the north, hiding his origin. The teacher reports that only the second prince returned after a year, and the first prince has still not been found. The princess, who went to the south to study medicine, died from poison. Thanks to her research, they were able to develop a cure for the flu, and the empire would have been completely different if she had returned here. The girl apologizes, explaining that she was just curious, and then gives the teacher a handkerchief to wipe his eyes. The man thanks the little girl and then says that she reminds him so much of the first princess, and one way or another, the throne passed to the second prince. The empire found itself on the brink of collapse, and every year taxes increased. The people's lives became worse and worse, and the emperor wasted wealth. The teacher says that he will not be exaggerating if he says that the empire is now ruled by Duke Bardion. Hearing this, the princess was surprised, and the man explained that the emperor also had to deal with the disaster in the north. At this time, the duke is responsible for both foreign and domestic policy, and by the way, he abandoned his duties 6 years ago. Hearing this, the little girl realized that it was then that she was born, and Reina died. Deska says that without the duke, the entire empire was paralyzed, and the emperor begged him to return, as a result of which the duke gained even more influence. Hearing this, the main character thought that her father was an even greater man than she thought. The princess asks the teacher why he is telling her about this. The man thought that he never even imagined that he would ever tell this to a 6-year-old child, and he understands that it is even strange to think about such a thing. In general, the old man immediately realized that the lady was very smart and gradually began to complicate the lessons and tasks to a level that was beyond the capabilities of an ordinary child. Amy understands that this lesson was very interesting because she learned a lot, especially what interested her. The teacher reports that he said that the lady is similar to the previous princess because she also surprised him with her talents every time. Deska reports that he thought back then that if the teacher had put more effort into her training, she would not have died so stupidly. The teacher says that from now on, he will talk about what she is really interested in and then asks if she has any questions. The little girl says that she has a question and therefore asks for an answer and then asks it. The man smiled and said that she was worried about the duke's safety. The princess says that if Dad were in such a situation, she thinks the emperor would hate him. The teacher says that this is said correctly, and then he asks the lady how many ordinary knights need to be pitted against the Duke of Magical Swordsmen. The little girl replies that she thinks 1,000 is enough, but the teacher says that tens of thousands are enough. After all, the Duke is so powerful that if he wishes, the Empire of Dendilicus will become the Empire of Bardion. Desko reports that therefore, for the Emperor the Duke is not only a protector, but also a cause for fear. And in the future, the right person must take the place of ruler. The little girl believes that Nestor is not the most suitable candidate. The teacher reports that people are still voting for the second prince because he has a half-brother, the first prince. His mother, a young lady from a small aristocratic family on the outskirts, was not recognized at the imperial court and died 3 years later. Perhaps this is why the first prince does not show himself properly. Hearing this, the main character wonders whether she knows too much about the emperor. The nanny comes into the room and asks in surprise if they are still working, and the girl asks what she needs. The maid reports that the duke is looking for the young lady, and therefore she suggests that she hurry. The girl became curious about what had suddenly happened to him, and then she quickly ran. Emily, entering the office, tells her dad that she came and then looks at the stranger, and she wonders who he is. The father explains that this man is the author of the book about markets that she was looking for. Hearing this, the princess screams and says that at last he has been found, and the duke says that anyone who sees it will understand that it is her merit. The girl says that she didn't say anything, and at that time, she thought that she would still judge herself by her own achievements. Emile asks the man if he wrote the book. He says that if he says he did, he might be right, but if he says he didn't, he won't be. The duke orders him to speak frankly. Hearing this, the man cries out, begging for mercy, as he didn't mean to do this, and then falls to his knees. Seeing this, the princess turns to her father and asks if he did something bad to her. He assures her that he has no reason to do so. The author of the book explains that he did not do this on purpose, because he understands that identity substitution is a crime, but there is data there that he examined. Carden got angry when he heard this, and the girl offered to tell them about it in more detail. The man reports that a 36-year-old man said he had a small shop selling scented candles on an alley in Place Vincent. His candles were unique and contained various medicinal herbs. The shop existed for a small circle of regular customers. 4 years ago, he was approached by a teacher who had once imparted to him knowledge about medicinal herbs. He asked to publish a book about markets under his name. The man thought about it and eventually collected the teacher's materials and published a book, calling himself its author. The man explains that the book brought in a lot of money for the store, and therefore the publication was useful. The princess says that now everything is clear to her, and she is not going to punish him, and then opens the book and asks if he knows what it means. The man explains that it's just a printing error, while the little girl doesn't understand whether he intends to sit on his lap like this all the time. Emmy asks her dad if he can be punished for publishing a book that he himself doesn't understand anything about. The Duke explains that he is definitely obliged to pay for this crime, because such are the laws of the Empire. The stranger says that the words were written by a master, so he doesn't know the meaning, and he compiled the book from what he gave him. The princess offers to arrange a meeting with his master because she has several questions. The gentleman explains that they have not seen each other for more than 2 years, and that he leads a nomadic lifestyle. The man says that the research materials remained in his store, and he still keeps them, and if this helps her, he will be happy to show everything. A father asks his daughter why she's so interested in the market. The lady explains that it's because the markets are cursed fairies. The girl assures that she is obliged to remove the curse from them because she feels very sorry for them, and she intends to help. The Duke turns to the nanny and says that he doesn't even know how to react to this. The woman explains that it is important not to cut off the wings of children's imagination, because this is the only way creative individuals grow. Father says that the nanny is right, and he wants her to really try to break the evil spell. The little girl thanked her dad, and at that moment thought that his work was imaginary, and she would definitely figure it out. The next day they came to the store, and the girl asked if it was true that this was an aromatic candle that brought happiness. Erwin asks if she knows what happened there and who reported it, and then tells the princess that he will take her there. When they went inside, the man said that it was cleaner than they thought and it smelled nice. At this time, a salesman comes to them with a broom in his hands, and it is clear that he tried very hard to put things in order there. Jacques welcomes the guests and says that they have come to the store for the scented candle that brings happiness. The seller led them to the second floor and said that this was a workshop, and the master always studied the markets there, and he did not know why he was so thorough in his study of the sinister flower. The man explains that in fact this flower grows only where there is a volume. Hearing this, the main character thought that it was quite possible that he must have taken the study of markets seriously. The girl looked at the notes and realized that she couldn't read anything. Jacques offers the princess to take a look, and she ponders what Erwin might be able to read. The assistant looked at these manuscripts in surprise and said that it was the first time in his life that he had seen such terrible handwriting. Hearing this, the little girl realized Erwin wouldn't succeed. He said he thought it was imperial language, since nothing could be understood without deciphering it. Emilet looked at Jacques and then asked if he could read it. He claims that he has known the master for 10 years, but he still cannot decipher his handwriting. Hearing this, the main character does not understand why he spoke so confidently, and then asks how the great book came to be. The man explains that he used to write normally, but research data is usually a map. Erwin looked at him in surprise and asked where he got it. He knew the map the Empire was using to conquer the North was full of errors. Since the appearance of the volume, that is, 3 years ago, the altitude of the area and even the plants marked are indicated there. Erwin asks Jacques in surprise if he is the one he calls master and who he is. The man insists that the master is definitely the wind, and that when he was 15, he took him in and taught him how to work with medicinal herbs. This man gave him the opportunity to earn a living, but ever since he grew up and opened a store, he always appeared as suddenly as he disappeared like the wind. Jacques says that although he occasionally came to check on things, the day will soon come when he'll live up to the foreman's expectations, as he works so hard for the store's good. The girl asks if he runs the household himself. Jacques says he does, of course, and has taken special care of his appearance. The man says that he planted plants, and people feel fresh, and nature is pleased. And he even hung a nice bow on the main door, and the master was very surprised. The princess realizes that the direction is completely wrong, and then says that there is a sun lounger. She is worried that few people come to this place. Then she asks, how about making the decor a little brighter? The girl suggests tidying up the dull grapevines and planting some bright flowers, because then there will be more visitors. Jacques thanked the lady and said that he would start right now, because he believed that things could change for the better. The main character thought that she didn't understand a word of the research notes, but it was fun, and she even received a gift. The man says that the candle is for body and mind, with a very pleasant aroma. Erwin reports that a kind guy lent him this valuable map, and it's all thanks to her lady. The girl thought that she had never seen Erwin so happy, as if he was holding some kind of treasure in his hands. The princess tells Erwin to look because she saw Teacher Tato. The assistant says that it seems he is preparing the city for the night of the harvest festival. When the spell is activated and launched into the sky, they will see incredible beauty. In the entire empire, only Master Teto could make such a large sphere. Hearing this, the little girl realized the harvest festival was very near. The girl understands that her dad has been very busy lately, and it's probably all because of the festival. Emmy asks Erwin if she can go to the harvest festival with her dad. The man explains to the lady that there is one secret and, as her knight, he will tell her about it. Erwin reports that the Duke has ordered all officials to complete their work before the festival, as this is his first harvest festival in a long time. The knight says that he never thought that he would ever see the real Duke again, because that's what he was like during Reina's life. During harvest festivals, they spent time together every day, strolling around the square. And during these times, they were very happy. Emmy turns to her assistant and says that she wants her dad to be happy as he once was. Erwin believes that, thanks to her, he sees the Duke enjoying every day, and his eyes seem to glow with joy. When the Duke looked at the map, he became interested in whether this map belonged to Master Jacques. Erwin assures that everything is so and suggests taking a look, since at the moment, this is the most accurate map of the Empire. The knight explains that it contains various characteristics, but the map is notable not only for this, but also for its great detail. Erwin believes that the northern lands are depicted very accurately. The gentleman says he will study it carefully and make a copy. The little girl asks her dad if he's going to catch a whilom again. He wonders why she's suddenly asking about it. The girl explains that she simply won't see him for a long time and won't go to the next capture, and then asks if that's true. The father explains that he will not be with the squad, and that he will replenish their ranks with priests and high-level magicians. The Duke explains that losses will multiply, and what could have taken 2 years will take 5 years. Hearing this, the girl remembered the teacher's words that one Duke was enough to perform the functions of thousands of knights. The main character thinks about how she can't stick to Carden like that, and then, screaming, says that she understands, and then she will go too. Emmy insists she'll work hard to master magic and cover Dad's back. Meanwhile, she's thinking that if Carden has to go, then she can too. The daughter tells her dad that she bought him something and then gives him a bag, and he asks in surprise if it is for him. Father turns to Erwin and asks if they were in the alley outside the shipping area. The assistant assures that this is not so, and the girl asks in surprise which shipping area this is. The Duke explains that the square has many interconnected places, and each alley has its own atmosphere. Many of them are dangerous. Just by setting foot there, she risks being robbed. The little girl says she understands. The girl thought that she hadn't even guessed about this when she was walking with the fairies, and therefore believed that this must be their secret. Emelette explains that she didn't choose her by chance, and therefore suggests that Dad not to worry, and then says that on the way back, she saw the teacher Tato in the square, and he was casting a spell. The princess asks in surprise if the day of the harvest festival has already arrived, and her father says that if she obeys, then perhaps she can go too. Hearing this, the main character assumes that maybe her father will go too. The little girl thinks that if this wasn't for Erwin, then she's almost caught. Emmy says that Dad must be very busy after all, and then says that she will go with Erwin and the nanny. The girl quickly runs away and says she'll ask the nanny. Dad tells her to wait because he can go with her. The daughter, surprised, asks what he is talking about, and at that moment realized that he said this, and then quietly says that she did not hear, and asks if he will repeat it again. The Duke says that he can go with her, and the little girl says that this is a very good idea, and at that time thought about what she had done. The nanny asks the princess how much she enjoys this day, and at the same time does her hair. The little girl says that she waited for him for a very long time, and didn't even believe that this day had finally come. The woman says that her princess is ready, because she has her hair done, and her outfit is very beautiful. At this time, the nanny remembered what this little baby looked like a few months ago, and then hugged the girl and said that she was charming. Emilet wondered why she was crying, and the woman asked for forgiveness, and at that time, she thought that she couldn't say why she had such emotions. At this time, a maid comes into the room and says that a child is walking in front of the estate and says that he is a friend of the princess. The girl asks in surprise what kind of friend this is, and the security guard tells the kid that lying is not good and suggests telling them the truth. When the main character saw the guy, she realized that he was a fairy and then ran up to him and asked if it was really him. She was wondering how he ended up there. Faye explains that he just really misses Amy. And at that moment, the little girl thought about how incredibly sweet he still is. Suddenly, the Duke approaches them and then takes the girl in his arms and asks how he dares to show up at the Duke's estate without bothering to introduce himself. The daughter looked at her father and thought that he was doing everything right. The gentleman asked who he was, when, where, why, and how he could become his daughter's friend. Amy explains that he is really her friend and not some weird kid. The boy explains that they met in the Imperial Library and now he lives in a magic tower. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised and said that he had never heard of such young students. Faye says that if he doesn't believe him, he should ask his grandfather from the magic tower, because he is his tutor. Carden used the magic circle, and the teacher asks what happened, because he can't believe that the master spoke to him first. The young lady saw Grandfather Medjihorse and was pleasantly surprised, and the Duke said that he was concerned about one question and then asked if he knew a child named Faye. The teacher says that he doesn't know, and the gentleman explains that the boy came to him and claims that he is the Tower Master's pupil and that he has black hair and yellow eyes. When the man saw the guy, he was surprised and asked in surprise why he was there, and then said that he forgot his name for a second, because this often happens with age. Medjihorse says that he has a talent for magic, and that's why he transferred him to the tower. Hearing this, the girl understood why the fairy used so much strange magic. The teacher asks why the fairy went to the Duke's estate. The boy explains that he wanted to go for a walk with his friend, and then apologizes for not warning him. The main character thought that her grandfather was very surprised, and then said that she wanted to go to the Harvest Festival with her dad today, and then asked if she could take Fairy with them. Amy says she wants them to go for a walk together. Grandfather says that's fine if the princess wants it that way. Walking along the main street, a saleswoman screamed and said that she had silk from the kingdom of Dobna, and the man who was selling next to her screamed and asked to look at his flowers. The gentleman assured them that only today could they see this wonderful production, and therefore suggested going to try the food. The main character became curious about why there were so many people and asked about it. Then she saw the man's hair change color and asked her dad if he had seen it. Carden explains that this is a temporary coloring and is only done at the Harvest Festival. In the old days, during a holiday, people wanted to stand out with their appearance, so they wrapped fabrics of their favorite colors around their heads. At this time, the tower and temple made hair dyeing possible, a traditional imperial pastime for the Harvest Festival. The father asks the girl if she wants to try it, and then buys her a box and asks her to just hold it carefully. The Duke tells her to imagine the color she wants to dye her hair. The young lady replies that she understands and thanks him. The little girl became curious about what hair color she liked, and within a few minutes she looked at the hair color with delight and thought that it was just what she wanted. Emily asks if this color suits her, and then she thinks about this being a chance to wear the hair color she had in her past life. Faye claims that she has the same black hair as him, and therefore thinks that it suits her very well. Hearing this, the Duke looked at the guy in surprise and asked what he was talking about, and then claimed that his daughter had the same hair color as him. At this time, the main character thought that they were both wrong, but she realized that she couldn't say it, and then suggested going to the barbecue. Amy approached the shashlik and said it smelled delicious. The vendor asked the sweet young lady if she had come with her father and brother. The woman claims that her son is just like his father and asks why they don't take 3 skewers. The main character says that she thought they were all a family because they all had black hair, and then asks her dad if he was going to eat it because it was very tasty. Carden touches the baby's face and says that if it's the hair, then half the people in this square look like they're related. The little girl remembers the pictures she saw and understands that many have black hair, perhaps due to the influence of the first wizard and Carden. Dad says that of course he doesn't need to dye his hair, and the little girl says that he's the best in the world. Faye turns to the girl and says that his hair is also naturally black. Amy smiles and says that he's such a child, and they're both beautiful, then asks if they realized it. The young lady enthusiastically suggests looking at the lanterns, as they are very beautiful at night. Residents of the street say that they should go to the fountain quickly because it will start soon and they are interested in what will happen this year. The girl screams and tells her dad that it's already starting. He says there are a lot of people there and suggests holding on tightly. The woman says that last year there was a magnificent spectacle and she is interested in what will happen this year. Amy saw a man holding a baby in his arms and jewelry falling out of his pocket. The main character looked at the fountain and told her dad that it was about to explode, and therefore suggested that they run away. The father looked at the girl screaming, and she lost consciousness for a few minutes, and when she came to, she realized that she was in pain. The girl found herself in an unknown place and realized that there was no light or people there. Amy remembered the teacher's words about how every street has its own unique environment, and among them, many are dangerous. And if she wanders into the wrong place, she might get robbed. The main character realizes she's right. She needs to get out of there as quickly as possible. But then she suddenly hears men's voices saying it's empty today. The robbers think tomorrow will be an even harder day. Meanwhile, the little girl hid, determined not to be seen. The man said the emperor's enemies had bad luck, but the ruler still hadn't recovered. The girl was very worried and wished they would pass quickly and not notice her. However, these people noticed the little girl and asked what she was doing, and also said that she should have hidden better. One man smiled and asked if she wasn't a cutie, and his friend claimed that she would fetch a good price at the market. Emilet turns to these people and says that it is better for them not to touch her, because they might feel very sorry for her. The man says she didn't scare them, and then invites the little girl to come to them. Meanwhile, the girl starts calling for help. Emmy used her magic and thought about how she should calm down and do as she was taught. Then, screaming, she said she'd had enough, because they were irritating her. Suddenly, the little girl felt herself being grabbed by the shirt and realized that the spell had not worked, and the robber was saying that she was caught. The princess ordered them to let her in, then glared at the man. She remembered the clown her teacher, Tito, had made for her. The girl asks if they knew, and then claims that they can come if they are tired of living. Suddenly, the robber grabs the girl by the leg and says that that's it, and now she will pay for forcing them to work. The main character assumes this is how her life will end, but suddenly, a stranger appears and attacks one of the bandits. The man screams and asks who he is that he so boldly invaded their territory. The stranger approaches the girl and says that she can't even stand up for herself, and then asks why she came to this place. He takes her hand and invites her to come with him, as he'll take her to the square. At that moment, the little girl realized he had blonde hair and that she'd already crossed paths with him in the alley. Emmy turns to the guy and calls him Blondie, and then tells him that she remembers, and then thanks him for saving her. The girl asks what his name is, and the guy asks why she needs to know. The little girl suggests calling her Lail. The stranger says his name is Arda. Princess suggests he wait, because before he leaves, she asks if the bandits are unconscious. He tells her not to worry, and the girl says that it's much better this way, and then asks what to do with these people, because they won't be able to drag them there, and they can't be allowed to escape. Arda says he has an idea, and she's not at all surprised and acts calm. The young lady asks if he thought she'd cry nonstop. The princess explains that she has to hold on, because if she cries, she won't be able to walk. The boy takes the girl's hand and offers to walk together. Arda points his finger and says that if she goes in that direction, she will see a fountain. And the little girl asks in surprise what it is like. The young man explains that everything is fine, and when she gets to the square, she will be safe, and he will be with her until then. The girl agrees with him and asks him to talk to her until they arrive. The little girl asks what he was doing there. The guy replies that he was following her, and she is surprised to hear this. Arda explains that he accidentally saw that the crowd had dragged her into a dangerous place, and then suggests that she go quickly, and then says that they are already there because the square is visible. The blonde man says goodbye to the girl, and then quickly disappears. The little girl manages to ask if they might ever meet again. Suddenly, a wind blew and brought a lot of sheets of paper, and the main character became curious about what it was. The princess took the paper and decided to read it. It was written there that the earth lacks the light of the precious sun, and the abandoned earth will be overcome by disease, and all living things will perish and turn to dust. Amy became curious about who wrote it, but suddenly Faye runs up to her and hugs her, then says that it's very good that he found her. Liel is okay, and if she's hurt. She assures him that everything is fine, but suddenly feels a lump in her throat. The main character always said that she was fine, no matter how hungry she was, and no matter how angry she was, and she didn't understand why this was happening to her, because no matter how sad she was, she should always be fine. The young lady reflects on how her life was truly miserable, but this time she has a family, and so she understands that everything is truly good now. The girl saw her dad and said that she was completely fine, but he hugged the girl and didn't let her say a word. The little girl was shaking all over, and he apologized. Hearing this, the little girl started crying. She says she was scared there in the dark alley. The girl says that she met scary men and thought that she would never see her father again, and that's why she was scared. Lying in bed, the main character thought that she couldn't sleep, even though she had told the nanny that she could sleep alone. The young lady reflects on the fact that she may be doing well because she had to endure a lot as a child, and then decides that she is okay now. Amy stepped into the hallway and wondered how long it had been, as it was so quiet. She saw the door and realized it was Carden's bedroom. The girl saw a portrait of Carden and Raina, and at that moment she realized what the woman who gave her the tin looked like, saying that she would illuminate the world with love. While walking across the room, the girl accidentally knocked over a bottle of wine, and her father, surprised, asked his daughter what she was doing at such a late hour. Amy explains that it's a midnight walk, and Dad says that if she goes to bed late, she won't grow up. The little girl asks if she's too big for this, and if he thinks she's still a baby. He agrees and reminds her that he used to scare her like that. Then he says it's too late, and that she should go to her room. The father picked up the baby and carried her to bed. She asks why he's not sleeping, and suggests that maybe he's scared because of what happened today. The Duke asks in surprise what he has to be afraid of, and then lies down next to the girl and says that he thinks it is precisely because of fear that she cannot sleep. Carden claims that he feels very calm when his faithful daughter is nearby, and then strokes her face and suggests that she fall asleep because everything is fine. The next day, Erwin says that they conducted an investigation and found out that first the fountain in the square exploded, and a few minutes later, explosions thundered throughout the city. Presumably, this is the work of those who are dissatisfied with the emperor. There were many people on the streets during the incident, and so this crime can be considered an act of terrorism. Hearing this, the main character thought that, if she recalled, the bandits had said the same thing. These bandits had wanted to enter the slave market this way, if they'd been able to follow them. Amy found it interesting that Arden had a strong connection with these guys, and the assistant explains that these hooligans were handed over to the Duke's investigative department. The girl asks if this means they're in the duchy now. The man explains that they're in another palace, and the Duke will interrogate them, that is, investigate their case. Carden tells her not to forget her head with these freaks, and the little girl thought that she should have hit them a couple more times. The fairy turns to the princess and invites them to dine together, then touches her hand. When the Duke saw this, he immediately told him to take his hand off his daughter. At this point, the little girl doesn't understand what kind of competition they're having. Dad tells Emily that if she wants, she can play with him any time, because he deciphered all the magic formulas in the square, and thanks to this, they saved her. The harvest festival is usually crowded, so various incidents are not uncommon. To prevent the use of magic and holy power, magical formulas are activated throughout the entire area. At a high level, they neutralize powerful magical and divine spells, and with them, the unrest at the festival has noticeably decreased. The established formula lasts until the end of the festival, and no one can break it. The princess asks how the fairies did it. The guy insists there was nothing complicated, although it took a while, which is why he found her so late. She insists everything is wonderful and asks if that's true. Amy claims she's safe now and remembers her flowers. Johnny asks if their mistress is truly okay. Flower explains that he was very worried that she might be hurt. The little girl insists that she can now return to her normal life, and that's why she's very happy. Erwin asks the princess if she dyed her hair at the festival, and she asks in surprise if it will be the same when she wakes up. The assistant reported that as far as he knew, the effect lasted for a day and suited her very well. Suddenly, the girl felt a tug in her heart and lost consciousness. When the main character woke up, she wondered how long she'd been sleeping. She opened her eyes and saw her father asking the teacher why she hadn't woken up yet. The man insists he's doing everything he can and doesn't understand why. The Duke, crying out, insists more is needed now and suggests treating instead of chatting. The little girl turns to her dad and he asks if she's awake. The girl wonders what happened to her because she feels like something warm is spreading in her heart. The teacher said he was glad she had come to after 2 days of unconsciousness. She was surprised to hear this. Considering the flow of magic in her body and the still black hair color, it seems to the girl that after dyeing her hair at the festival, the mana has not left her body and continues to accumulate. Sometimes people are born with low mana consumption, and then higher-level carriers store what is inaccessible to them. Tito reports that he placed magical energy-absorbing plants near her, and he is happy because it seems to be working. The man thinks that it is not the time to chat, and he should go get the seedlings, and then leaves. The main character looked at her father and realized that he looked scared again. She took his hand and told him she was okay. At this time, the nanny enters the room and addresses his lordship, then informs him that the master of the magic tower has arrived. The father tells the girl to rest and then leaves. The nanny stays with her. Carden says that he dealt with the bandits, but he doesn't understand what's happening to Leal. Faye reports that he was told that there was something wrong with the magical flow, and he thought she had 2 powers. Flower says the princess is in pain and suggests they be careful with her and not touch her. The boy tells them to be quiet because they might wake her. Johnny, surprised, asks if he can hear them. Faye touches the sleeping girl's hair and tells her not to get sick, as she is his dear friend. The protagonist recalls that in a past life, she had severe stomach pain and called the hospital. The doctor said she had acute appendicitis and needed urgent surgery. The doctor asks if she has a guardian, and she replies no. After the surgery, the girl took the bus home and heated up some instant porridge. However, all this time, the main character was haunted by the feeling that she had been somewhere else for a long time. When Amy opened her eyes, she wondered how long she had been asleep. And the little girl, crying, asked her dad if she had recovered and if everything was okay now. Her father says it looks like it and thinks she's healthier than ever. She says she feels so light she could even run 3 laps. Suddenly, the princess fell, and the master, screaming, ordered her doctor to be called immediately. The little girl laughed and assured him that she was certainly fine now, since she had only pretended. Carden brought his daughter soup, and she thought it was impossible for her father to feed her with a spoon. He was asking her to eat a little. Emmy asks if he made the soup himself. Dad says he didn't, and she says it's delicious, and it's probably because he's feeding it to her. The main character realizes that she likes eating with a spoon, but this was too much. After her body recovered, she couldn't take a step without Carden. He took her with him to both the imperial palace and the noble assembly chamber. The little girl, opening the letter, realizes that there is nothing to play with except an invitation to tea, and at this time, the servants do not even understand what to do with the princess today. The little girl reflects on the fact that she understands everything, but she is very bored because her father is overprotective of her. When the young lady came to the garden with her father, she saw many flowers and cried out that it was very beautiful there. Dad says he's glad she likes Odiana's garden, as it's a place where aristocrats and the emperor's guests stroll. The garden is so large that it's rare to see anyone there. The little girl bent down and then picked a flower, made a ring out of it, and then put it on her father's finger. Emmy asked if he liked the gift, and then explained that her nanny taught her how to make flower rings. The girl looked at her father's reaction and wondered if it didn't fit perfectly, because she thought it looked even better on him. The princess tells her dad that she will also make a bracelet, but when she started doing it, she realized that it was more difficult than she thought. When the little girl looked back, she saw her father holding a flower crown. He said he thought it would look great on her, and then he put it on her hair, delightedly saying it was wonderful. At this time, the boys were playing with the crown prince, and when the princess saw them, she asked in surprise what they were doing, because she realized that they were beating the boy. The girl offers her father to support the wreath, and then runs up to them and screams, telling them to stop. The boy, surprised, asks who she is, and how dare she distract the prince from his game. The young lady angrily asks if that's how they play. The boy asks if she can find a replacement for him, and the prince smiles. He says he thinks she's Lady Bardion and asks her to leave them politely. The girl asks if he wants to play hide-and-seek, and then insists that she does too. The prince tells her to stop talking nonsense. When the boys heard him call her Lady Bardion, they were terrified. The princess asked if he doubted himself. Hearing this, the prince raised his hand to hit the little girl, but she pushed him away with the help of magic, and at that time thought that he should feel all her magical power. Emmy asks the guys if they want to clap for him, and then asks for forgiveness, because she didn't think that he would fall from her childish blow. At this point, the Duke approaches them and addresses His Highness, then informs them that this is a bad game. He says he doesn't care what they're doing or what they're playing, but he can't say otherwise. The prince says it's not like that at all. He's just a simpleton. But at that moment, his mother approaches him. Emmy thought about what she saw, an invitation to a palace tea party. The Empress wonders what's going on and asks Carden about it. He tells her he thinks the prince has vision problems, as he can't see who he's throwing mud at. The Duke offers to check the boy's eyes, and then says goodbye. The princess approaches the boy and tells him to come with them, as she will help him with his wounds. Carden and their daughter treated the boy's wounds, and the girl says that his whole head is dirty. When she touched his hair, she saw the color of his eyes and thought about what she had assumed, but still could not believe that Arda was a prince. The princess called his name, and her father asked if he was the boy who saved her in the square. The little girl insisted it was him, and she hadn't even known he was the first prince. Amy reports that she knew the prince was wandering somewhere near the palace, but she didn't think it was an Arda, and that's why the prince wasn't affected by the explosion in the square. The boy explains that he has nothing to do with the incident and that he only helped her. The little girl looks at her dad and asks what's wrong. The father says that he is grateful to him for saving his daughter, and then asks him to think about what he would like to receive as a reward. The princess asks her father what's wrong with her savior. He explains that the Arda prince's presence changes things, as he understands that it's not worth getting involved with the imperial family. Emmy wondered who would protect Arda then. On the way home, Carden explained to the little girl the relationship between the two princes. The eldest of them is Adrian the Younger, Nestor, but only the second son is treated like a prince. They went to school together as children. The first prince showed excellent results in all subjects, so the emperor fired all the teachers. Hadrian, who had no support from either his families or aristocrats, became more of a shadow in the imperial palace, and the more high society talked about Nestor, the faster they forgot about his brother. Hearing this, the protagonist realizes that Arda is still a child, and she wonders why this happened to him. The Duke says that he agrees, because this is too much, but he was born a prince in the imperial palace, and this is his burden. The next day, the girl was very happy because she saw the teacher. Her father asked if she had forgotten what he had said yesterday. Emmy says that of course she remembers that she shouldn't leave the tower until Dad returns. After the incident with Nestor, Carden was hesitant to take her into the palace, so he began working from the duchy. The knight explains to the gentleman that the suspects in the case of the explosion in the square began to show signs of insanity the day after their arrest, and a day later, 2 of them were found dead. The gentleman understands that they didn't even question them. In addition, the date of the black market's opening was written in red liquid on the wall of the dungeon, along with a similar description of its location. This information seems reliable, and in a couple of days, Erwin announces that he will begin checking the black market and report the results to the master. Hearing this, the main character realizes it's very suspicious and wonders how this could be. She tells her dad that she wants to go to the magic tower tomorrow. The girl thought that she should visit those who were worried about her. Tito asks the princess how she feels, and the little girl assures that she is better than ever. The man asks if he can hold her hand for a second. He says it's fine, but he assumes that the divine power makes it impossible to accurately assess her current condition. The girl asks if she should let the priest see it. He thinks the priest will probably say the same thing. Tito explains that, simply put, it's like drawing conclusions based on only half a body. And if the temple finds out, the continent will be shocked, so it's best to avoid meeting with the priests. The teacher suggested they begin the lesson and continue where they left off. Suddenly, the girl noticed that the teacher had fallen asleep again. Liel appeared unnoticed in the room, and the princess, surprised, asks what's wrong with his hair. He explains that he spent too much energy last time, and that's why it's a consequence. The guy asks if it suits him. The girl assures him that he looks amazing. Faye asks the girl if he's handsome. At this time, the main character thought that his appearance was dangerous, and then said that he had become even more handsome. The princess invites him to sit down because she wants to give him a ponytail. He asks if she has classes today, and also inquires if she can control her strength. Emmy assures that, of course, she trained hard, and thought that maybe she would soon be able to release fire or wind from her hands. The girl wondered what would happen if she quickly surpassed Carden. Then she looked at the sleeping teacher and thought about classes being canceled. The young lady asks why he always puts the teacher to sleep when he comes. The boy replies that he doesn't know him yet, and that the teacher may be good, but it's better for him not to hear about him. Faye tells the girl he can have her. She understands that the one personally chosen by the master of the magic tower, who in an instant deciphered the formula established by the magic tower and the temple, is the genius wizard of the century. The guy explains that all magic is based on simple formulas, and its forms differ depending on the formula used. Faye used magic to show the girl how it works, and then suggested she try it. She said it looked complicated. The princess wondered if she could do it. The boy assured her she had it, and then showed her how. Emmy saw magic in a few minutes, and the guy said that it was dangerous, and then they decided to own it together. The little girl explains that she didn't mean to, because she doesn't understand why it suddenly happened. Faye tells her not to worry, because he'll show her something cool while they have time. Suddenly, the girl saw the cat with the butterflies, and then took him home. The father asks her why she needs a kitten, and the little girl explains that they haven't seen each other for so long, and that she will eat and then go play with him. Emilette wonders if this kitten is cute, and suggests looking at its paws. The carriage suddenly stopped, and the Duke asked what was going on. The coachman apologized, and then explained that a child had suddenly jumped out onto the road. Carden got out of the carriage and asked what was going on there, but he saw the prince. Arda addresses him as if he were a master, and says that regarding the reward he spoke about, he has a big request for him. The Duke thinks that there are too many prying eyes in this place, and therefore suggests getting into the carriage. When they arrived home, Dad told the girl that she was probably tired and asked why she didn't go to her room. However, the little girl insists that she wants to stay and asks how long the Ardu will have to wait. The Duke asks if he really wants to learn to wield a sword, and then says that they will soon send him a good teacher. However, the boy objects and insists he wants to study to become a duke. Hearing this, the man, surprised, asks if he wants him to stand behind him. Ard explains that he's only asking to be taught fencing because he wants to become a swordsman. Hearing this, the girl recalled how he knocked out those three with just a stick. The main character believes that if, under the guidance of a good teacher, the prince can fully realize his potential, he will definitely become a wonderful swordsman. Carden wanted to object, but the girl said she would learn sword fighting with him. Her father believed she didn't need to learn such a dangerous skill. Emmy asks in surprise how much longer they will protect her, because she understands that he is worried about her, but she also wants to be strong. The princess was angry at Carden for treating her like a fragile glass figurine, but she understands that she doesn't want to spend her entire life in someone's shadow. The main character reflects on how she needs to be strong to protect what's dear to her. Then she reminds him that she said she would protect her father. The princess claims that at least this is her chance, and she will definitely take advantage of it. The girl recalls her past life, where her boss asked if there would be any difficulties in terms of family equality. The little girl understands that in her past life, she simplified so many opportunities, and Carden worked to the last drop, and Prince Ard was a lonely boy abandoned in the palace. The Duke says he will teach both her and the prince. Hearing this, the little girl is delighted and thanks her father. She says she truly loves him very much. The young lady realized that this was something she had never told him. The next day, the teacher asks in surprise what it is, because he never told her the formula for creating such a large tornado. At this time, the Duke entered the room, and with a snap of his fingers, the magic disappeared. And then he offers to tell why it cannot be controlled. Tato explains that the princess's understanding of formulas and working with mana is almost perfect. But this continues. But he thinks that the problem may lie in her second power. Possessing both magical and divine energies, the teacher became curious whether she could use them simultaneously. Tito reports that in any case they can turn to a priest for help and provide her with more practice. The next day, the girl started with cleaning, and by the end of the day, she says she finally completed all 3 sets. However, she understands that, given her physical abilities, this isn't enough. The main character had been practicing fencing for a week already, but she wasn't very confident, so she only built up the muscles in her legs and had never picked up a sword before. Ard passed the main test and began personal training with Carden. The little girl watches them and asks her dad not to hit him so hard because he doesn't know what will happen if he falls. And then she turns to the cat and calls her a fairy. The girl wonders why he comes every morning in the form of a cat, because Ard doesn't know that he is a person, and then hugs the cat and asks why he is so cute. The blonde boy asks if he's back again, and then pets the cat, but she scratches him. The little girl explains this behavior by saying they haven't met yet. The princess says that if he plays with him, he'll become friends. And then she took a bandage to wrap his hand. Emmy asks how he's doing with Nestor, and suggests telling the truth instead of lying. He assures her that everything has been fine these days. The emperor's birthday celebrations are coming up next month, so Nestor is busy preparing. The princess asks if he will go there too, and he says that he does the same as every year, but he always hides in the corner. The girl thought that even fencing training is a secret, so at the banquet they should pretend that they know each other. The main character does not think about the fact that at the reception, Ard and she will be the first prince and princess of the Bardian family. A month later, the princess and her father were sitting in a carriage, watching him and thinking that he was not in the mood today. Amy asks her dad if she looks good today, and he says the nanny must have done a great job. And she thinks she has a feeling he'll die if he says she's beautiful. The father says that of all the children at the banquet, there will not be a single one who will be better than her, and she says that among everyone at the banquet, her father is also the most handsome. When the aristocrats saw the Duke, they began to whisper that he had not attended such events for many years. The women became curious about the child he was holding. The father looked at their gazes and explained that was why he hadn't wanted to come. When the Duke walked, everyone watched him very closely, and the little girl was amazed by the luxury of this palace. The main character reflects on the fact that she has never been to such banquets, and her dad says that if she wants to leave, then just let her say so, and then gives her a cake. The girl objects and explains that they just arrived, and she is interested in watching. Suddenly, a gentleman approaches the Duke and says he is the Marquis of Maiden. He then asks if this is Princess Bardion, the tower's youngest student. The Marquis says that at such a young age this girl is already so beautiful, and this was to be expected because she looks very much like the Duke. Emmy understands that he is diligently praising her to seem better to Carden, and the Duke asks if he thinks so, and the girl realized that it worked. Maiden smiled and then assured that, of course, it was true, because the princess was more beautiful than they said. The ladies stared at the Duke very closely, and then began flirting with him. The little girl thought she was going to vomit because she wanted to get out of there. Then the father and daughter went for a walk. The little girl asked if they had any more time. He explained that, according to the rules of etiquette, they could not leave before the arrival of the imperial family. The Duke asks if she wants to go home already, and she asks what he's talking about, because she understands that this cannot be done. Dad suggests the little girl stay here because he's going to bring her food. The girl says she wants something tastier than this cake. The main character looked at the aristocrats, and thought that this was not for her, because she just wanted to play with Adrian, but she realized that she hadn't even seen it. The little girl reflects on the fact that he never missed fencing lessons and must have proven his skill by now. Amy wondered if she'd ever be able to even say hello to him outside the Duke's house. Suddenly, the little girl saw the kitten and asked the fairy if he was there too. The princess says he's missed her and decided to come, then runs up to him. She assures him they're alone in this place, so she offers to chat. The girl reflects on the fact that today he decided to be a wonderful cat, and then she looked and realized that he does not have golden eyes. The blonde man says that, unfortunately, the cat is not in the mood to talk, and then greets the young lady and says that he is its owner. The little girl thought that, judging by his appearance, he occupies a high place in the hierarchy, but nevertheless he looks familiar. And then the cat ran up to him, and she realized that he was the owner of the black cat. The guy says that he completely forgot to introduce himself, and then says that his name is Nelvasto. Nevasto is the second main male character. He was once in love with Reina. Reina's assistant is the great saint's best friend, and he loved her very much. But he couldn't confess his feelings to her, so he decided to hide them deeper. And, as it turned out, it was unrequited love. The man asks if he should also introduce the cat, and then says that his name is Kami, but the baby calls him Kami. Nevasto, hearing this, is surprised and asks how she knows him. Kami is the cat Reina and Nevasto found outside the sanctuary. His mother cat abandoned him, and he ate something that made him lose weight. A guy took him in and nursed him back to health, and then Reina named the cat Kimi. Nelvasto has been raising him carefully ever since, and apparently a bond has formed between them. The little one explains that he simply has black fur, and that's why she thought the name Kami suited him. The man says that he never thought he would hear that again, and then agrees with her, and says that it is because of his black fur that he is called that. The gentleman says she has a talent for naming, and the little girl thanks him and agrees, because she thinks so too. The princess reflects that, given the perfect names of those two fairies, he's absolutely right. Nelvasto says he's long wanted to meet her. The main character realizes that she is the only one that Reina has left. When the Duke arrived, the girl couldn't understand the tension. Nelvasto said they hadn't seen the Duke in a while, and her father said it was true, then suggested his daughter leave. The fair-haired gentleman waved his hand to the girl, and as she and her father left, she thought that the emperor had already arrived. The aristocrats greet the emperor and say they are honored to meet the ruler of the empire. His Majesty hopes they will enjoy their stay. The princess looked at him and did not understand why he looked even fatter than before, but she was worried because she still had not seen Arda. Margise turns to the Duke and says with delight that he has come. But she couldn't find him and already thought that he had gone home first. The Empress explains that the children were simply fooling around that time, and she hopes that this did not lead to misunderstanding. Her Majesty explains that the eldest prince has problems with his eyesight, which is why he has so many bruises and abrasions, and she simply did not know whether it bothered him. The main character, watching them, realized that this was how they communicated. The Empress said that this time, in a sword fight, her prince defeated a younger knight and even defeated a seasoned warrior. Margise says he thinks he needs a new teacher who matches his current skill level, but finding such an outstanding mentor for a Nestor is no easy task. Suddenly, they heard a crash, and the Empress screamed, asking what was happening. Arda fell to the floor, and the girl realized it was the prince's brother. The Empress asks if the prince is okay, and thinks that his vision must not have fully recovered yet, and she is worried. The princess reflects on the fact that they are brothers, but are not at all similar, and considers this very strange. She understands that in such a situation, she should simply stand and watch another difficult test that has befallen the soul of Arda. If he finds himself in a situation from which he cannot escape, no matter how hard he tries, he can only suffer. The Duke approaches the prince and suggests that he get up, otherwise he might get hurt on the shards, and then reminds him that he has already said that it is important to take care of your body and health. Carden tells him not to let this affect tomorrow's training, and then holds out his hand for him to stand up. Hearing this, the Empress, surprised, asks what training he's talking about. Carden explains that he's his fencing teacher. Arda says he believes the eldest prince has every chance of mastering the sword with excellence. The Duke recalls that he said he was concerned about poor eyesight, but during his studies, he did not notice any such problems. That day, Carden not only extended a helping hand to Arda, but he also said that in this place, they were not accustomed to taking care of the eldest prince. The gentleman says that he will definitely find a fencing teacher for his brother, and then suggests that the prince go and change his clothes. The protagonist realizes that on this day, something that had been hidden for so long was revealed. Duke Bardion's clan sided with the eldest prince. Arda asks in surprise why he helped him. The Duke explains that despite such treatment, he continued to do nothing. The boy lowered his head and asked what he was supposed to do. It was hard to believe that the eldest prince and Duke Bardion weren't very close. The girl understood how strong the relationship between teacher and student was. It was clear that Bardion, who had initially maintained neutrality, had now sided with the elder prince. And now, not only the royal nobility, but also important foreign figures, will not look down on the Arda heir to the throne. The Duke says he'll give the slippers and allows Zhukov to step into them. The prince says that now that the Bardion's honor is at stake, he'd prefer to go on his own. The princess understands that her father has decided to side with the righteous Arda, and then extends his hand and offers to go together. The girl claims that now nothing will stop them from being together. She asks if he is hungry, and therefore suggests going out to eat something tasty. The next day, Emilet says she's very tired, and doesn't know when she'll be able to hold a sword again. She says she doesn't want to talk, but it's not like she was thinking of keeping quiet. But it's scary, just like her father taught her. The prince greeted the girl, and she said he had worked hard and offered him a drink of water. The lady asked what happened at home yesterday. Arda reports that they irritate him because all the courtiers paid a lot of attention to the prince, and also said that he had a powerful aura of a swordsman. Nestor's face was so funny. The little girl says that she saw it too. Arda reports that Mr. Carden gave him very cool shoes, and no one dares to insult him, and therefore considers it incredible. In his dealings with the nobility, Arda encountered the same thing she did. The prince assures her that he will definitely repay her. The little girl asks in surprise why he is so grateful, because she thinks that nothing would have happened without his diligence. The princess says that in the future, he will become an excellent swordsman, and she is sure of it, and then calls herself his sister. The boy asks in surprise if she's too young to be his sister, since he's only 10. She asks in surprise what he's afraid of, since she's older than him. Arda agrees with her and says that's fine, but she looks younger. Suddenly, the lady sees the cat and asks when she managed to arrive. The main character understands that during the Arda, the fairies always appeared in the form of a cat, and she does not understand why he is no longer afraid. The girl takes the guy by the hand and then tells Arda that this is her fairy friend, and that the guy with black hair knows that this is the eldest prince, Adrian. The young lady offers to say hello to them, and the fairy angrily asks what she wants from him. The prince explains that he has never played with his friends and then greets the new guy. Faye sees a handkerchief on the floor and asks if it's the nanny's. The girl assures him that she'll wash it for him. Arda looked at the main character and then asked to do his laundry. But the fairy took the handkerchief and wiped the prince's brow. The young lady, watching him, thought that the fairy wanted to get closer to the Arda. Emilet explains that she herself can't believe it, because he hid behind his mother's skirt and stared at her. Arda had to return to the palace. The main character asks him if this is the first time he's seen her room. The girl opens the door and shows him her room. The flowers ask Leal how her day was, and the girl explains to the guy that these are the markets she grows, and one is called Sir, and the other Johnny. The fairies report that these are nice guys, and the princess became interested in why the flowers became so quiet. The nanny turns to the young lady and says that she has worked hard today, and that is why she has prepared these cookies for her. The woman says that if she eats too many, she might get sick, so she suggests that they split them between themselves, 3 at a time. The little girl thought that if she knew how to bake cookies, she would eat them as much as she wanted, and therefore she was thinking about getting down to it and doing it. The princess, surprised, asks her nanny if she's going somewhere. The woman explains that she wants to take a walk to the central square because she needs to send a letter. The nanny claims that she will return soon and therefore suggests that the girl not go anywhere so that she does not worry about her. Hearing this, the guys looked at each other with pleasure because they realized that they were being left unattended. And then the girl told the markets that she went for a walk with the fairies. The girl understands that the forbidden fruit is the sweetest, and in a few minutes they were already at the main square. The main character recalls the first time they went for a walk. But suddenly, she overheard the men talking. The man said that relatives from the Pardo estate told him that a huge pile of Valoom corpses had been found in the area around it. The interlocutor tells him not to talk nonsense, as the estate is far from the northern mountains, and he doesn't understand where the Volumam would come from. He also suggests that in that case they should keep it a secret. The man claims that this is precisely why there is chaos in the estate, and he does not even understand how dangerous it is. The princess reflects on the fact that these volumes have gone beyond the north, and then she tells the fairy that they should return. Suddenly, the crowd starts shouting that a person was hit, and there was a lot of red liquid on the road. Emmy looked closer and realized it was her nanny who had been hit by the carriage. The little girl was in shock, knowing there was no priest nearby. The princess quietly asks for someone to help her nanny. Faye takes the girl by the shoulders and then asks her to come to her senses, because they must go to the temple right now. The fairy magically transported the nanny and the princess. The priests, surprised, asked where a human had come from in their temple, and the man thinks that this is the work of a magician, and then asks how they dared to invade here, because he understands that they must inform the Holy Father as soon as possible. The Deuce screams and asks if they can't see that the man is wounded, and then says that she is the daughter of the Duke of Bardion. Navasto looked at the girl and asked if she was a princess. Amy asked him to save her nanny. The blonde man places his hand on the little girl's head and asks her not to worry about her. She asks if everything will be okay with this woman. The gentleman offers to carry the woman to the restroom. The princess hugs the man and thanks him. Navasto explains that this is his duty. Hearing this, the girl realized he is the Holy Father, the authority figure of the entire sacred temple. The man asks if she minds moving to another place. The little girl sees a cat and then tells the fairy to look at the animal. The girl asks the guy if he's okay, and he assures her he's fine. The Holy Father approaches them and says he doesn't think so. Navasto says that they should rest a little, and he takes them to the room where the nanny is lying. Faye sat next to the nanny's bed the whole time, and the main character thought that he could lie down and rest peacefully, but he was still very stubborn. The Holy Father tells the girl not to worry, because after a good rest, the nanny will quickly come to her senses, and then asks if she would like to go for a walk, because there is something to see there. The Holy Father asks the little girl why she changed her address so abruptly, and then explains that he was more accustomed to her calling him less formally. The main character thought about how he was a Holy Father, and then asked if she could call him Mr. Nelvasto. He said it sounded a bit impolite, so she suggested calling him Uncle. The little girl looked at him in surprise, and he insisted that everything was true, because after all, he could be her real uncle. The gentleman explained that he and Reina were like brother and sister. The girl noticed that after these words, although his eyes were full of love, not a drop of regret or sadness flashed across his face. Amy agrees with him and calls him Uncle. And at this point, they don't understand why she can't call him Father. After all, he saved her nanny. The guy tells the girl that it sounds great and that she's doing a great job. The little girl tells him to stop talking to her like that because she's not that little. The gentleman tells the princess that she is very similar to her mother, especially when she frowns and puffs out her cheeks with dissatisfaction, and that she is certainly gifted like her father. The Holy Father reports that he heard that the girl is studying in a magic tower and already knows how to use movement magic, and then asks if this is true. Hearing this, the main character remembered that she must keep the fairy's identity a secret and not tell anyone about it. She understands that she must keep her promise. Emmy doesn't even know what to answer, and the man tells her not to be embarrassed, because it's really amazing. In order to avoid the conversation, the princess suggests taking a look, and then asks where all that water comes from. The Holy Father smiled and said that it was all holy, and if the owner of divine power drank this water, he would be able to replenish his strength. The man explains that if he waters the flowers, they'll bloom right away. The little girl excitedly says she wants that too. The gentleman offers to try, of course, but in case she doesn't succeed, the girl doesn't even listen to him, and then she watered the flowers and they bloomed. The main character was surprised because she saw an incredible effect and thought that maybe holy water would help her markets. Amy asks her uncle if she can take some water with her. He says that if she needs it, she can take as much as she wants. The Holy Father says that he doesn't know why she needed it, but suggests using it wisely. The little girl thanked him, and he said that if she needed more, she could come any time. Navasto says that he thinks it's time to say goodbye, and her nanny has probably already come to her senses, so she suggests they go quickly. Suddenly, the girl saw her father, who nudged the Holy Father and then asked if she was okay. The daughter assured her that she was fine. The Duke asks what she was doing to him. At that moment, the nanny comes to them, and when the girl saw her, she immediately ran to her. The woman asks in surprise what's going on. Emmy says she thought she'd never see her again. The nanny assures the princess that everything is fine with her, and thanks to her, she is now completely fine. Carden says they should go home. The girl asks for a moment and then turns to Faye. Hearing this, the father, surprised, asks if this guy is also with her, and the daughter says that she will explain everything later. Navasto grabs the Duke by the hand and then says that he wants to ask him about the princess because he is interested in something. When the girl came into the room where the nanny was lying, she saw that the chair near the bed was empty, and she did not understand where he had gone, since he had been resting there. The Holy Father says he would like to protect Lady Rhaena's daughter. The Duke, however, claims this is impudence and asserts that he is capable of doing so himself, suggesting they not worry. The Master says that she possesses divine power, and otherwise she would not have been able to repeat something like this. Navasto reports that without the Divine Lady's power, she would not have been able to make the flowers she watered with holy water bloom. The Holy Father claims that he has no other intentions, but since he believes that his help is not needed. However, the Duke no longer listened to this man, and then took his daughter by the hand and suggested that they leave. The young lady reflects on the fact that this only happened once, and she doesn't even understand how it happened. The girl looked at the men, confused. The blonde man announced that from today on, he would be one of her teachers. Hearing this, the main character realized that he was a holy father, and then asked if Uncle would teach lessons. When the Duke heard her call the man Uncle, he became very angry. The little girl explains that he said she could call him that. Father suggests calling him simply teacher, or maybe even uncle, but when her father is not around. Navasto says that he has heard about her abilities, and to be honest, it is truly amazing. The man thinks that in the village, she is in no way inferior to the great priests, and then asks if that is why she has problems. Emmylette reports that this is true and she is unable to use magic. The man believes that her divine power is still dormant, and that they should first try to awaken it. The main character, surprised, asks how to do this. He explains that he will now transfer some of his divine power to her. Navasto tells her to close her eyes and concentrate, because then everything will work out for them. The princess agreed, and after a few minutes, she thought that she felt something flowing inside her, and that it was different from the usual flows of mana. The girl understands that it is about to burst out, and the Holy Father looks at the girl in surprise and says that it is Rhaena. Navasto reports that the color of their powers is the same, and it is amazing that they coexist with both magic and divine power. The man reports that she also inherited the colors of their parents, and this happens extremely rarely. The main character thought that she previously simply knew that she possessed divine power, but now she saw it with her own eyes. The girl thinks that maybe she will be able to use the spell, because she must simultaneously release magic and divine power. Amy screams and says that she succeeded, and looks with delight at what she did. Tato says in surprise that it is magic and divine power, and he never thought he would see such a thing. Navasto believes that strength is strength, but the princess's talent is truly amazing, because now they have a lot to learn, and he relies on her, the princess. The little girl started playing and drew glasses for her dad, and then a mustache. She found it a little funny, but she still doesn't believe that she can do such a thing. The father turns to Emily and says that he thinks she will be interested in learning about her mother. Hearing this, the girl thought that, of course, she was interested. But this was the first time she had heard about Rain from the cardinal's lips. The Duke reports that she, like him, possesses magical power and, like Rhaena, is divine, and only he has no idea how this happened. The father says he thinks he can guess how Rhaena would react to this. The little girl asks in surprise, "What's that like?" Carden says that one power is good, but two is better. Hearing this, the princess realized that this was wonderful. The father gave the girl a box and offered it to her. She opened it and, surprised, asked what it was. The gentleman explains that this is the bracelet that her mother wore because she wanted to pass it on to her daughter in the event of the awakening of divine power. Dad puts the bracelet on his hand and says that it is filled with divine energy and stabilizes the mind and body of its owner. The little girl looked at her hand in surprise and realized that at least she had something left of her mother. Dad asks if he's right for her. When the main character came home, she immediately ran to her flowers and then showed them the bottle and invited them to look. The girl explains that this is holy water. Unlike ordinary water, it is imbued with divine power. Johnny says in surprise that this is amazing, and the little girl assures that this is not all, and then opens it and says that now she can use magic and asks how they do it. The master says that this is very cool, and when the girl started watering, he says that it's supposedly raining. The princess says that she brought it especially for them, and then asks if they feel anything. Johnny replies that he doesn't feel anything, but it's just as if he was refreshed, just like with regular water. The next day, the Lord invites Leal to look at them and then orders her to quickly wake up and look at them. The girl asks what's going on and why they're making so much noise. Then she looks at them and realizes the markets are in bloom. The flowers turned into magical cones and said they were now free. The little girl asked if this was true, as she was very surprised. Johnny explains that he can't believe they were able to escape from the flowers and then thanks the princess for what she did for them. The main character realizes that she freed them from the curse, and Johnny says that it's like he's in a dream and loves her very much. The nanny asks the princess if she's awake. The girl remembers she has to go to class and then invites her into the room. The maid wished her mistress good morning and then told her the day's schedule. The young lady looked at the maid in surprise, wondering if she could actually see them. Teto was also very surprised and then asked how she was able to enchant these fireflies. He thinks their princess is a genius. Hearing this, the fireflies began to attack him, and the teacher, surprised, asked the princess what he did wrong. The duke thinks it might not be magic and asks if that's the case. The little girl recalls that when she first saw them, she thought they were talking bugs. The teacher realized that it wasn't magic because they were freed from the markets and beautiful flowers that had opened from buds remained in the pots. Teto says in surprise that the markets have blossomed and then asks the princess how she managed this, since none of his methods worked. Sudar explains that it's all thanks to Liel. After all, they were fairies trapped in flowers. Liel gave them holy water and freed them. The teacher is surprised and asks what kind of holy water they are talking about, and then claims that they are not at all like fairies. The protagonist explains that she heard their voices when she first saw the markets in the lab. Since then, she has been searching for a way to break the curse. Teto understands what it means that all this time the flowers were talking to her, but he wonders why only the princess heard their voice, and when he watered them with holy water, there was no result. Johnny explains that Lael is different from everyone else and possesses a special aura that other people don't have. They speculate that it might be due to the power the princess possesses. Emmilette says that this is because she has two of them, and at that time, she thought that this is true, because she has two powers, which is almost impossible. The sovereign reports that the Liel's power is different from the one that trapped them in the flowers, and if the entire world were to change, it wouldn't affect the Liel. The Duke asks if this doesn't only affect her. Johnny, surprised, asks what he's talking about, since he believes anyone can be affected by the forces of change, animals and people alike. Amy, surprised, asks how it's possible to change people and animals. The gentleman explains that they were stuck in the flowers, but others took on a different appearance. Johnny explains that they've grown a lot and become very noisy. The teacher suggests they wait, then takes a piece of paper and asks if they're talking about them. Sudar says with delight that he draws very well, and it looks very similar. The main character reflects on the fact that people and animals become volumes, and therefore all of them. Carden says that the northern mountains have been closed to them for 300 years, and if the words of the Fae are true, then there are practically no people among the volumes, and most of them are wild animals. The teacher thinks you'll mutate, causing the volumes to keep appearing. Then he asks if they should install a barrier in the north. Tato believes that if they block off part of the territory and restrict access for animals, the number of volumes will decrease sharply. The Duke says he thinks it should work, and he will consult with the head of the magic tower. Carden says that if everything is successful, then the conquest of the north. But the teacher interrupts him and says that creating a barrier for all the northern lands is a bit difficult. The main character reflects on the fact that even in the original novel, the real reason for the appearance of the volumes was not revealed, but she understands that she needs to learn more about it. The princess saw that these fireflies began to fall, and then she ran up to them and put her palms under them. The girl asks what's wrong with them and if they're in pain. Suitor says it seems their strength is leaving them, then explains that they're creatures who need to live in the wild. Johnny explains that they're barely maintaining their current appearance, as they usually look completely different. And to ensure no more fairies fall into the northern trap, word of the danger must be spread as quickly as possible. Emily asks, upset, if this means they'll leave her. The master suggests not to worry, because as soon as they regain their strength, they'll definitely return. Johnny offers to cement this promise, and the girl asks him to promise to return. When the markets left, the princess felt a little sad. Suddenly, she saw men telling her not to be upset. Edwin says that where there is a meeting, there is also a separation, and then claims that this is not what he meant to say. The father asks the little girl if she's okay. The girl thought about them worrying about her, and she felt a little uneasy. The main character reflects on how sad she is, of course, but not so worried. Then, with a cry, she says she wants something sweet. The Duke orders that something to eat be brought immediately. Having learned the secret of the origin of the volumes, Carden told everything to the head of the magic tower and the Holy Father, key figures in the subordination of the North. And teacher Tetu began to study a huge amount of ancient materials. 2 days later, the girl thought that she was having fun because she received so many cookies. The princess realized she was starting to get thirsty from eating so many sweets, or rather, only sweets. Then she wondered if she should bake anything else. Suddenly, the girl heard a question about whether she knew how to bake cookies, and became curious about who was speaking. Suddenly, a guy came down from the tree, and she asked in surprise where he came from and how long he had been sitting there. The young man explains that he hasn't been looking there for very long, and then asks if she's almost finished with the cookies. Navasto asks why the young lady is walking alone. The little girl explains that she just wanted to spend some time alone. The man claims it was a joke, and that he'd be bored sitting alone in the church, so he came to her. He then explains that everyone loves praying to God so much that their knees bleed. Hearing this, the main character does not understand how the Holy Father can say such things. Navasto says he knows one way that can lift her spirits and asks if she wants to try it. The Holy Father invites the princess to climb onto his back. Meanwhile, the little girl thinks that although she's not that small, it's still worth a try. The man offers the little girl to hold on tight, and then he climbs the wall. At this point, the main character thinks she wanted to lift her spirits, not die. The girl screams and asks him to stop doing this. The guy asks what she's saying and if she likes it. Amy asks him to let her go, but he says it hurts and asks him not to pull her hair. In a few minutes, they found themselves on the roof of the palace, from which there was a very beautiful view. The princess says with delight that this is the first time she has ever been so high up, but she reluctantly says that it takes her breath away and asks if this is true. The man started running on the roof, and the girl really liked it. She screamed and said that it was very funny, and then called him uncle, and he said that it was right to call him uncle. Amy looked down and saw Carden. The Holy Father announced that if they didn't come down immediately, he would kill them, then suggested the princess hold on to him tightly. In a second, Navasto and the girl were on the ground, and Carden was already waiting for them there. He turns to his daughter and invites her to come to him. The father asks the girl what would happen if she fell, and realizes she could have broken something. She insists she understood. The Duke says that since she understood everything, he's curious about her expression. Navasto asks her not to be so harsh on her, and then reveals that he was the one who took her there. Carden says that if even one hair fell from her, the Holy Father interrupts him and says that he knows that he would never allow such a thing, and therefore considers his worries to be in vain. At this time, the main character looked at these men and thought that it was difficult with them because they didn't get along at all. The Duke asks why he came here, and the Holy Father explains that he has homework for the princess and then gives the girl a bag. Navasto asks the young lady what she thinks priests do. She thinks it's purification. The Holy Father says that this is true because they do not only heal living beings, and then asks if he remembers how she almost pulled out his hair and now everything is fine with him. The man explains that this can be considered a cleansing. Amy asks if this is true and if they are truly okay. At this point, the main character thought there had to be some kind of catch, but her uncle said there were things more important than healing, and that included experiencing the divine power, and she just had to start with the basics. Navasto explains that what lies in the bag they call the seed of death, and what he will tell you about usually occurs naturally in places where the aura of death wanders. As the family fills with energy, an aura of death envelops the land and pollutes everything in the area to the point that life can no longer exist there. The princess wondered what it meant that with the help of divine power, they could be freed from the aura of doom. And her uncle suggested trying to cleanse them by the next lesson, as he thought it wouldn't be difficult. The nanny did the girl's hair and said she was done and would bring her some warm milk. The little girl thanked her and thought about how interesting it had been today. Her father asked her if she enjoyed climbing on the roof. At that moment, the little girl realized that this had angered her father. Emily explains that she doesn't even know because she thought it would be more fun. And the gentleman says that the two of them were running around like crazy. The main character doesn't understand when he managed to see this, and Dad wonders what would have happened if they had fallen from such a height. The Duke asked if she wanted to stay in bed without getting up. At that moment, the girl realized he wasn't angry, just worried. The princess realizes that she hadn't even thought about it and then holds out her hands to him and tells him that he can hit her as hard as she made him worry. At this time, the main character thought that she should be punished just like in her past life, and then says that it should be as much as she upset him. The Duke, surprised, asks what she is saying, and the girl, screaming, suggests that he just hit her once. At this point, the nanny enters the room and asks the Duke, surprised, "What's going on?" Carden explains that no, it's just what she thought. The next day, the girl picked up a sword and began training. Her father told her to stretch her legs forward and bend her knees. Amy thought that she would become a genius swordmaster like Carden, but she was worried. Irwin suggests they call it a day, as he looked at the little girl and realized she was tired. Meanwhile, the princess reflects on how she never would have thought she could do such a thing. Suddenly, a fae runs up to her and tells her she's worked hard today. The fae, who had suddenly disappeared from the temple for a couple of days, didn't return and apologized for dragging her out the day the Carden caught her. The guy tells the girl that it seems the Duke hasn't been in the mood lately, and she thinks that it's all his fault. The kids were playing on the table, stacking wooden things. The little girl said she succeeded and suggested the fairy try too. The father saw the little girl eating a cookie and asked if she had breakfast. The princess replied that she had eaten, but because of training, she was always hungry. The maid says that if she eats well, she'll soon grow up. The young lady asks if she thinks so, and then asserts that she thinks she's already grown a little. The guy invites her to see if this is true, and after a few minutes, he says that it is true because she has grown up. The little girl thinks she's grown up just a little. Irwin apologizes and turns to the Duke, then informs him that he's come about what he asked him about last time. Carden read the report and asked if he was sure of it. The aide insisted that it was, and according to the Lord, he had seen it himself. Therefore, he believed the Lord should take a look. Meanwhile, the princess watches them and becomes curious about what happened, but can't ask directly. Irwin says it seems the three of them have become very close. The Duke says that the territory of the Pardo is in the south of the empire, and then asks his daughter if she wants to look at the sea. A few hours later, they were sitting in the carriage, and the girl said it was very cool, and then asked if it was. However, her father didn't answer, and she realized something had happened. The main character understands that Carden is simply not himself, because he became like this after yesterday. Faye says that without Leal, he will be so bored and lonely. The gentleman explains that she is only leaving for a week. The guy says that he is still sad, and then asks if she won't be bored and sad, especially when the Duke is busy with his own affairs. Amulet asks the fairy why he doesn't go with them, and then asks Dad if they can take the fairy and Arda with them, because he knows that it will be more fun together. The girl looked at her father and realized she hadn't even thought about him. Erwin said the Duke must have wanted to spend time with her. The little girl reflects on how she should have been thinking about him instead of the unfulfilled dreams of her past life. Faye looks at the young lady and asks if she's still in anticipation. Amy thinks it will be the best trip ever. The boy invites the little girl to look out the window, as he's never seen such beauty. At this point, the main character doesn't understand whether she's the one who feels uneasy there. She notices that the fairy isn't feeling well, and then asks her father to ask the coachman to stop. Amy wondered if this trip was worth continuing. Dad told her to wake up, because it was time to get up, and they were almost to Pardo. The young lady looked out the window and saw the sea and many seagulls, and then asked Ard if he was also seeing the sea for the first time. The boy said he'd only seen pictures of him before, and he felt like it was all a dream. The little girl thought Ard was impressed too. Emily wonders how long the fairy sleeps. Her father explains that he fell asleep around the same time she did. Suddenly, the black-haired boy woke up and apologized. Ard insisted everything was fine. As he'd been sleeping so soundly, he'd even started drooling. Faye wipes her mouth and asks if it's true. The girl, smiling, explains that she's joking. The Marquise says it's a great honor to meet them and welcomes Duke Bardillon. The Marquis asks if his daughter and sons have arrived with him. Carden explains that these guys are his daughter's friends. Aristocrats don't usually befriend those below them in status, although sometimes they just play and have fun with those. But they only marry people of equal status to them, because it can't be otherwise. The Marquise greets the boys and says that they are probably tired after a long trip, and therefore suggests that they move on quickly. The princess asks if her father's room is directly across from hers. The maids say yes, and then think how cute this girl is. Dad knocks on the girl's door and asks if she's ready. Meanwhile, she's thinking he's a prankster. Carden looked at his daughter and asked what was wrong, and also inquired about her clothes. The little girl explains that she just washed her face and tells him to button his shirt right now, because she understands that at this rate, he will charm all the maids. The Duke did as his daughter asked, and then asked if she was happy. The little girl said it was excellent and suggested he be more careful in the future, then suggested they go to dinner. When the Marquise saw the Duke, she invited them to sit down. The main character looked at the table and realized that all these dishes were made with seafood, and she was in heaven. The Marquise says that today's menu is made up of their signature family dishes, and all the ingredients are fresh from the sea. The princess reflected on how long she hadn't done something like this, and her mouth was watering. Dad took the fish and cut it open. The little girl claims that she was able to cope with it herself, but her father selected all the bones so that she would not swallow them. Carden turns to his daughter and invites her to speak up if she needs anything. The woman looks at them and says he's such an attentive father. When Amy ate the fish, she realized it was delicious, and the lady asked her if she liked it. She looked at the guy sitting near the Marquise and wondered why he was staring at her. The princess doesn't understand how one can look at a person like that while they're eating. The woman says they completely forgot to introduce the children. The boy thanked his mother and then asked to be allowed to introduce himself and said that his name was 8 Pardo and that he would be turning 9 this year. The main character reflects on the fact that he and Ard are the same age. He says he'll do everything he can to ensure she has a good time at their estate. The girl realizes he's trying to act grown up, even though he's still a child. The mother turns to her daughter and says it's her turn. The princess looked at the girl and wondered where she'd seen her before. The young lady said her name was Eli, and she was 6 years old. Amy didn't understand why she was staring at Faye and Ard. The Marquis apologizes, explaining that his daughter, due to her age, has difficulty maintaining manners. Her mother says everyone already knows how old she is, as does their beautiful princess, who looks so much like her father. At this point, the little girl considered whether to show them her other side. Then she said it was an unexpected compliment, and that she still had a lot to do to become like her father. The Marchioness says this girl is like honey to the ears, and at that moment, the princess wonders if her father likes her new look. The gentleman just smiles. As the little girl was walking down the hallway, she saw some guys talking to Eli. She wondered what they were doing there. Emilet greets the boys and asks what they're chatting about. When the girl sees the princess, she quickly runs away. Faye asks the main character how she slept, and she asks what they were discussing. Ard explains that the girl simply asked to play with her. The princess asks what they told her. The boys say they said they already promised to play with her, so they went looking for her. The children came to the sea together. The little girl said that this was the first time so many ships had come out, and then suggested they go down closer to the water. Faye suggested the princess be careful and not get too close. The princess looked at the flowers and thought they looked like marquettes, and she wondered how Sudar and Johnny were doing. There are more and more evil, cursed creatures in the north every day. She thinks Carden will probably have to go there again because there are too many of them. The main character does not understand whether it is really impossible to put an end to this catastrophe. Suddenly, she overheard a man asking a woman if she knew anything about herbs. The woman, surprised, said she couldn't believe her ears and looked at the plant in amazement. The man explains that since the ban on travel along the mountain road was introduced, these herbs have been impossible to obtain, and they have been living like this for a month. The princess recalls a conversation about the corpses of volumes being discovered at the foot of the mountains, and she realized that it was true. Ard looked at the girl and asked what was wrong. She said she understood why her father had decided to come here, but he'd tell her the details later, so she suggested they go for a walk. Emily says today was an interesting day, and the guy asks what she liked most. Suddenly, Aid approaches them and says he heard they decided to take a walk around the estate. The princess explains that she had a good time, and the guy asks where they went, and then says that it is, after all, one of his duties is to tell them about the worthy places of their estate. Aid insists that next time he'll go with them, because he thinks it'll be much more fun with him. The girl asks if he thinks she didn't have fun with her guys. The main character doesn't consider the possibility that he grew up in this backwater, but the guy objects and explains that's not what he meant. He simply believes she should associate with people from high society. Amy wondered if he would behave like an arrogant nobleman, and then said that in that case, she should definitely not communicate with him. Eat asks in surprise what this means, and the girl explains that, as far as she understood, he thinks that the surname Bardian is his equal, and then asks if this is true. The princess explains that her friends aren't the kind to be treated like that, and therefore suggests an apology. The boy, surprised, asks why he would apologize to commoners. The main character says that she will give him advice, and then suggests that he find out from his parents about their status, and then not forget to come running with an apology. Prince Ard and the Fey Mage don't reveal their identities, and it's obviously impossible to say who they really are. The young lady muses that this is even a bit childish, since he, like a normal child, should simply gravitate toward his peers. This guy already differentiates people by status, and his parents must be constantly telling him this. The princess thinks it's wrong to judge people like that. Faye asks if she should scold him for ruining her mood. Hearing this, the little girl smiles and asks if she should cast a spell on him tonight, believing he's too good for such things. Emily says that, frankly, she's not particularly upset, but she thanks him for the offer. After all, she wants him to realize his mistake. The Duke asks if this means that tonight, and at that moment, his daughter runs up to him, and he takes her in his arms, and then says that he sees that she has been waiting for him. The girl explains that she, the fairy, and Arda just recently returned from a walk, and she wonders where Daddy was all this time. The Duke explains that he was discussing important matters with those men. The little girl asks if something happened, and he says she shouldn't know. Her father says he'll take her to see the estate tomorrow. The girl is delighted, because that means they'll spend the next day together. Then she says she was at the beach today. Amy quickly got into bed, and her father thought she was already asleep. A few minutes later, the girl looked out the window and saw a carriage leaving the estate, and she thought about what she knew. At that moment, the guys enter her room, and she says they're just in time. Ard tells his friend to wait, as they're on the 4th floor. The princess realizes that Ard hasn't yet seen what a fairy can do. The black-haired boy suggests not to be afraid, but to come to him, for he will help. Within minutes, the boys were in the bushes, watching the Duke. The assistant said it was the last one, and suggested they follow him. Hearing this, the girl doesn't understand what they're talking about. Then she hears the words that this is the last volume discovered on their estate. The Marquis says that this is the last of the 3 found, but fortunately they were dead, so there were no casualties, but their presence here is a mystery. The princess thought that this was the first time she saw the body of a volume, and Carden and Erwin seemed very small next to them. The fairy wondered how they got there, and then asked if it was strange. The Duke said they were all in the same condition, and it felt like they died immediately after the transformation. The gentleman reports that this is possible, and that he will increase the number of mages and priests at the Pardo estate. Hearing this, the Marquis thanks the Duke, and then says he will quickly bring a carriage there and return. Erwin asks the Duke if he is thinking of telling the princess about this, because he assumes that maybe, as in the case of the market, the princess will be able to solve this riddle. The gentleman says she's still a child, and he doesn't want to take away her childhood, because she's only 6 years old, and doesn't want her to see the ugliness of this world, because he doesn't want her to have the childhood he had. Emily heard this. She turned to the boys and insisted that they needed to leave, because they had to return before their dad. The boys quickly returned to the estate with the help of magic, and the girl wished the fairy good night. She said that he seemed very shaken by what he saw. Arda says he's a little shocked himself, because now it's clear why the Duke came here. He asks the girl if she's okay. The princess assures that everything is fine, and thanks you for going with her, and then wishes you a good rest and to see each other tomorrow. After the boys left, she lay down on the bed and said that Carden must have been dealing with this kind of thing his whole life. She remembered her teacher's words about one day being able to use both powers simultaneously. But even though scientists haven't yet found a way to do this, volumes can only be defeated with magic, and then the divine power of sensation will finish the job and completely destroy them. Exterminating volumes requires mastery of 2 abilities, and if the girl can use both powers, she becomes interested in whether she will be able to deal with this problem. The main character is considering learning how to purify herself first, and decides to try tomorrow. She suddenly remembers that the fairies are leaving through the window and doesn't understand why the door is open. When the girl looked out into the hallway, she didn't understand why everyone was fussing. The Duke asked what had happened. The Marquis explains that his daughter has been ill since morning and is only getting worse, so they called a doctor. He apologizes for having to involve the master of the maids. The princess became interested in where Faye and Arda were, because as far as she remembers, yesterday morning they were talking about something, and then this girl looked healthy, and she became interested in what happened. Emile asks if she can go see her, and the Marquise agrees. Eli screams and tells them all to leave because she doesn't want to see anyone. The princess asks the girl how she's feeling, as they were worried and decided to visit her. The girl ignores the young lady and turns to the boys. The main character realizes that this little girl continues to ignore her. Eli asks the boys to hold her hand. The doctor apologizes and then says that he was unable to determine the cause of the illness. But fortunately, it is not contagious, because now it is necessary to give her an antipyretic and observe. The doctor says it's hard to get medicinal herbs at a time like this, much less medicine. The mother says her daughter finally fell asleep and then thanked them. The princess says that they did a good job, and at that time remembered that when she was sick, Carden must have looked after her with the same care. When Eli woke up, she asked where those guys went. Dad asked if he should call her brother, but the girl objected because she wanted to see those guys. The princess heard her demands and does not understand what is wrong with her, and then tells Eli that they cannot obey her and always be there. Hearing this, the girl began to cry, and the Marquise grabbed his head and said that it seemed she would not stop, and then asked if they could stay a little longer. Faye, surprised, asks Liel what they should do. The protagonist reflects on how she really doesn't want to, but she feels incredibly ill, especially since she's so young. The princess assures them that everything is fine and that they can stay with her until she gets better. The Marquise thanks his mistress, and she tells the boys to take care of her. 2 days later, Arda was very tired in the evening. The princess asked how Eli was, and he explained that he barely escaped and didn't want her to catch him. The main character asks if it's that bad, and he says he even said something terrible, and as soon as they leave, she immediately bursts into tears. But it's even harder for Fairy, because she doesn't let go of him for a second. Emilet apologizes for dragging them into this, and then announces that they have to return soon, even though they haven't even explored the estate. Arda assures them everything is fine and thinks it's time for him to go. The princess reflects on the fact that she has never practiced cleansing, because today, during the day, she had a good time walking with her dad. While the fairies and Arda were suffering, she and her father walked around and cooled off, and then she realized that she needed to start practicing. The girl opened the suitcase and realized that someone had taken the bag the Holy Father had given her. This must have happened that night when the door was open. The young lady recalls the teacher's words that the family of death has almost no effect on the bearers of divine power, but for ordinary people, it is mortally dangerous, and therefore precautions must be taken. When the girl entered the room, she realized no one was there and assumed she had gotten sick from the seeds. She looked at the sleeping baby and thought that they must already be taking effect and didn't even know what to do. Suddenly, the fairy turns to the princess and says they haven't seen each other in a while. The young lady says she thinks she understands why Eli is sick and then asks the boy if he really knew. Faye reports that after absorbing the seeds of doom, the chances of survival are minimal and believes that with this knowledge, it would have been harder for her. Amy insists he should have told her, then says they need to call a priest. However, he points out that this won't save her, since when she stole the seeds of doom, they instantly entered her system, and no matter how many priests tried to cleanse her, they would fail, and this girl must pay for her actions. After all, she was simply unlucky. If someone stole her clothes or something else, she wouldn't have died. The guy says that what happened happened, and it's her fault, and she hastened her own demise. The princess asks how long she is left, and he says he doesn't know, but definitely not long. Amy wonders if she has a chance of recovery. Faye says she's unsure if anything can help her, except perhaps purification by divine power and magic. And only a few are capable of that. The girl asks what about him. He says he can't use both powers at once. The lady wonders if all they can do is wait for the day she dies. The princess asks if she can handle it. Upon hearing this, the boy looks at her in surprise, but the girl continues to say that she's talking about purification. Otherwise, Nelvasta wouldn't have given her such a task. Faye, surprised, says she hasn't even tried yet and should at least try. The girl assures her that maybe something will work out, because the main thing is to focus, because that's the most important part. The main character took the girl's hand and wondered what was going on. The energy in the air was far more powerful and ominous than that of the seeds of doom. However, she was confident she could handle it. She had to try. The princess considers that she can't give up so easily. The boy suggests that Leal stop, as he suspects she might harm herself. The girl says she needs a little more time, and she'll be able to clean the seeds. The fairy gives the princess a bag and suggests starting with these seeds. The guy says that if she tries to cleanse a person right away, she will overload the body greatly because he already understood, and no matter how much you stop her, she will not back down. Faye leaves, leaving the young lady alone. The protagonist thought that she had to cope. She didn't want this little girl to fall into eternal sleep. The next day, the Marquise said, upset, that it seemed the antipyretic was no longer helping. She thought she needed to contact her doctor and ask for other medications. The princess asks the fairy if he still thinks she's doing wrong. He says he understands it's hard to believe, but she only has a day left to live. Amy argues that then there's little in this world to believe in. Much has happened to the young lady since she remembered her past life. She met a nanny who loved her unconditionally. By a miraculous coincidence, she met Faye and Arda. Thanks to good people, she learned to be more open. They made her happy, and she began to smile more often. After all, she understands what it means to love and be loved. The princess invites the guy to look, and he asks in surprise how she did it. The girl explains that this is all thanks to him, because before she believed that purification was the task of divine power. But after listening to him, Amy looked at it from a different perspective. If magic could be used to cleanse, then she should have used both powers simultaneously. The girl explains that as soon as she stopped holding back her mana, everything worked out, because she'd been focusing on the wrong thing all this time. Faye, surprised, asks why it was thanks to him. The princess explains that his words made her think, and then asks if she should pay such a price for her actions, because stealing is, of course, a sin, but not one that is punishable by death. The girl believes that sometimes it is enough to point out a person's mistake, and then she looked at the young lady and hoped that she would soon get better. When Eli woke up in the morning, she asked where Faye was. The maid asked what was wrong, and then asked if she had a fever. At this point, the main character looked at the boy and asked why he was crying. Faye said he wished he'd met her sooner. Just then, Eli's parents entered the room. After returning home, the girl lay in bed for about 3 days. Teacher Teto diagnosed exhaustion, as she should have confessed to using the cleansing. However, Father Nelvasto's reaction to what he heard was simply heaven and earth. The Holy Father says he knew the girl could handle it, but the Pope asks how she dared to act so recklessly. The Duke turns to the fair-haired boy and asks if he doesn't understand that she could have died. The uncle assures her that she could simply be overtired and that she needs to rest. Then he asks if he's overreacting. The nanny screams and says that the princess needs peace and therefore suggests leaving. The main character fully recovered within 3 days and thought it was a relief that everything had ended well. When they were about to leave, Eli ran up to the princess and gave her a bag of glass beads. Then she apologized. After the purification, the seeds of doom disappeared, so she gave her beads. The protagonist tried to find the seeds but didn't think it was necessary. The princess said that this was a very good gift and she would take care of it, and at that time she thought that this girl was sincerely sorry and then thanked her guardian angel. Nelvasto asks the girl if it means she now has beads instead of seeds. She asks how he appeared so suddenly, and the man explains that he's been sitting there for a while and asks if she's noticed his Evo. The girl explains that it's a gift, and her uncle asks if she remembers that her birthday is coming up. He says he hopes her father will invite him to the celebration. The little girl says they won't be celebrating. Hearing this, the Holy Father asks in surprise, why? The young lady wonders what this banquet is all about, considering she thinks nothing special has happened. Nelvasto claims it's unthinkable, since in her place, he would insist on holding a banquet. The little girl says she doesn't even want to think about it, since she'd just like to spend time with her loved ones, but she certainly wouldn't throw a grand reception. Reina's demise will come after her birthday. Her uncle says he thinks she should try, since many people will want to come to her celebration. The Holy Father said he would definitely come and congratulate her. A week later, many people came to her birthday party. The princess, surprised, asks the nanny what's going on. Her father explains that he also invited Sir Deska, but unfortunately, he's not feeling well, so he sent her a letter of congratulations. The Duke turns to his daughter and thanks her for being there. The girl says she's very grateful to him for throwing her such a wonderful party. Carden looked at the portrait and said he'd like them to celebrate this day together. The protagonist says she doesn't want to feel guilty, but she can't do otherwise. Dad says that Reina, more than anyone, would love to be with them on this day. And at least he thinks so. The girl says that her dad is the best, and it's her birthday too. 4 years later, the main character looks in the mirror and says she looks like her now. The girl takes up the sword and says that at this rate, she'll become a professional. Erwin agrees with her and then says he senses the aura of a strong swordsman. The young lady insists she's no worse than her father. Carden tells his daughter that she's in good shape, though she's still training with a wooden sword. He says she still has a long way to go before she can become a worthy swordswoman. The princess asks if he praises her like that, and then says that in any case, from this day on, she will study in the magic tower. Dad says we should drop her off there then. Emile says she'll just change in a jiffy. Amy tells her father that she recently heard some interesting news and asks if he wants to listen, and then says that it seems she has a new brother. Hearing this, the Duke, surprised, asks what she's talking about, and the girl explains that she heard about it from the maids. Rumors have been circulating lately that a little prince is hiding in the duchy. Carden asks if there are any more rumors after the nonsense she's already told. She says she'll soon marry Arden. He angrily asks how they dare to talk such nonsense. The girl looked at her father and asked what was wrong with him and whether it didn't amuse him. The Duke angrily asked who had allowed them to spread such rumors about them. When the little girl got out of the carriage, her father said that neither of these rumors were true. At this point, the main character realized he was being condescending toward her. Tato greeted the princess, and she, surprised, asked what he was wearing. He explained that it was his new armor, but it was still in development, and he'd used additional magic to make it absorb even the slightest attack. Amy thinks it looks very durable, and the teacher says that he made it from volume leather, and he has some samples left after his research. The little girl asks in surprise where he got so much skin. He explains that after all these years of conquering, he's accumulated a large number of skin samples. There were many cases of them infiltrating villages and attacking ordinary people. Priests and mages who destroyed the volumes sent their corpses for analysis. Fortunately, since the barrier was erected around the mountain range 4 years ago, the number of boulders trading through the portal has decreased significantly. The teacher says that although this isn't a fundamental decision, life has become much better. The lady understands that all these years a new conquest team has been forming. The princess hopes that in the future she will also be able to join them, because her power will certainly be useful. Tato suggests ending the chatter and getting down to business. Hearing this, the girl was delighted, and then they began to train. After classes, the girl became curious about what the fairy was doing, and she assumed that he was probably sleeping again, most likely right in the library. The girl opened the door and looked at the boy sleeping with a book. The lady remembered that when she first saw him there, she mistook him for a sleeping angel. The main character asks if he's awake. He assures her it's just time for him to get up. She wonders how long his hair has been. A young lady asks if his hair gives him a headache. He says it only hurts a little, and she suggests trimming it a little. He asks if she likes his long hair, and she thinks that if he walks and smiles like that, he might get into trouble because she assumes that he might be kidnapped. The guy insists he only smiles in front of her, and she asks in surprise if that's true. The young man insists that only she knows what he looks like when he smiles. Faye says that then she can kidnap him because he doesn't mind at all, and then he extends his hand to her and asks if she will take him. Arda these days. Suddenly, they heard the prince cry out that he was asking only once and asking if he could not do it for him. The boys realized it was Arda and Nestor. The main character recalls that over the past 4 years, the power structure in the palace has changed. Carden supported the first prince of Arda, and the rest of the nobles began to support him. In the end, the emperor had no choice but to restore Arda's rights. He achieved outstanding results in all his educational endeavors. Unlike Nestor, who found himself in the opposite position, Empress Marguerite was the center of attention. Powerful people turned their backs on her. The first prince, who learned at an incredible rate, and the second prince, who struggled academically. No matter how much the empress supported the second prince, everyone now knew the truth about who would take the throne next. The red-haired boy screams, claiming that everyone around him supported him, but now he's become a laughingstock and asks how this happened. Then, he concludes that their rivalry is futile. At this point, the princess approaches them and greets Arda, then asks if guests have arrived. The red-haired boy says that as soon as she appeared, everything collapsed. Arda extends his hand and tells Nestor not to dare touch his guests. He asks, surprised, how he dares block his path, and then asks what his connection is with this abandoned woman. Hearing this, the main character claims he seems to have no idea who he's talking to, and which of them will be abandoned next. After all, his thick head hasn't succeeded in any area. The girl says that even his swordsmanship skills are limited, and only his mother supports him. Then she asks what will happen to him if he doesn't take the throne. Amy asks which of them will be the one abandoned then. Hearing this, the guy screams and asks what she's talking about, thinking she's just a sock with the last name Bardion. Nestor wanted to hit Milady, but she used magic, and he screamed and asked how they dared to do this to him. Arda apologizes and says that because of this guy, they had to witness a rather unpleasant scene. Amy wonders if he often behaves like this. The prince says he rarely does, but today he came to him with a request. The girl smiled and asked if he meant to ask to receive his bad grades, and then asked what his answer was. Arda thinks that this is impossible, and the girl says that now she understands why he is so angry, because she knows that Arda will take the throne. The main character reflects on how, when Arda becomes emperor, they won't be able to gather like this, let alone travel, and he'll probably have a lover. The girl became curious whether she would also be able to find her love, since in her entire life, she had never met anyone of the opposite sex of his age except Arda and Faye. The fairy turns to the princess and says she's suddenly turned pale. The little girl explains she was simply thinking about her lover. Hearing this, the guys looked at her in surprise and asked who she was talking about and who her lover was. She explained that she was talking about the future. The princess says that she doesn't even know where her lover could come from now, since she assumes that her father would incinerate him with just one glance. Arda says that's true, and then asks why she suddenly thought of that. She explains that she too will grow up someday, and by then she'll have a lover, and hope he'll be his ideal type. The guy asks her what her type is. She replies that she doesn't know, because the main thing is to make a good first impression, and then asks if he's the same. The prince explains that he doesn't have a type. Meanwhile, the girl looks at him and thinks he's still a child, judging by his embarrassment. She wants to tease him, but thinks she should refrain.